the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501 Assassination in the Ward. Hermione was a little flattered and shook Mrs. Longbottom's hand. She said, "Mrs. Longbottom, I didn't expect you to know me." "Yes, Neville told me about you. You helped him through some difficulties, didn't you?" Mrs. Longbottom said to Hermione kindly. But soon, she looked at Neville with a stern and scrutinizing look and said, "But he doesn't have the talent of his father, I have to say." As Mrs. Longbottom spoke, she looked at the two beds inside. Noticing Mrs. Longbottom's gaze, Ron couldn't help but exclaimed, "What? Is that your father over there, Neville?" Hearing Ron's words, Mrs. Longbottom seemed a little surprised. She looked at Neville and asked sternly, "Neville, haven't you told your friends about your parents?" Neville took a deep breath, looked up at the ceiling, and shook his head gently. Seeing this, Mrs. Longbottom said angrily, "Neville, this is not a shameful thing. You should be proud, Neville, proud. They sacrificed their sanity and health, not to let their only son be ashamed of them." Not far away, Lin and Irina watched Mrs. Longbottom's accusation of Neville, and couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Even if the Longbottoms were Death Eaters, not heroes who saved the world, Neville, as their child, would never be ashamed of them. Neville regarded his parents as a secret that he was unwilling to reveal, not because he was ashamed of them, but lacked their company. When his friends showed off what kind of toys their parents bought for them, what kind of delicious food they made, and where they went to play, should he tell his friends that his parents lived in the hospital and never accompanied him? Exclamation mark. Mrs. Longbottom said loudly, "This is not a shameful thing. My son and daughter-in-law were tortured crazy by the men of the mysterious man. They are auras, very respected in the magic world, and very talented. The two of them." Mrs. Longbottom's eyes were attracted by the person who walked down from the bed. It was a woman in pajamas. She was Neville's mother, Alice Longbottom. But she looked thin and haggard, not as plump and happy as in the photo of the Order of the Phoenix that Lin and Irina saw from Dumbledore. Alice's hair looked completely white, messy, and dry. She was obviously an old woman, but her behavior looked like a timid little girl. Alice gestured to Neville timidly, holding something in her hand. Irina noticed that it was a piece of wrapper of blowing super bubble gum. Obviously, Alice could regard this worthless piece of candy wrapper so preciously, which must be related to her only child. After all, emotions, especially family affection, are the most precious added value. Lin walked up slowly, looking into Alice's eyes, and quietly mobilized the magic power in his body according to the trajectory of legilimency. However, Lin En did not want to perform legilimency on Alice, but to use a similar method to legilimency, to explore the state of Alice's soul. Being driven crazy by the torture of the Cruciatus curse, Alice's body was definitely not a simple mental illness. You know, the Cruciatus curse is a thorough black magic, and it also has great damage and destruction to the soul. Generally speaking, a wizard who has suffered the torture of the Cruciatus curse will leave a scar on his soul that can never be erased. This is also the reason why wizards who have suffered the Cruciatus curse can't help trembling when they hear the Cruciatus curse even after recovery. The reason why Irina is not afraid of the Cruciatus curse, and even learned the Cruciatus curse, and used it on those black wizards, is because Lin En used all chemical equipment to protect her soul. If the pain caused by the Cruciatus curse to the cursed person is a skin injury, then the damage caused by the Cruciatus curse to the soul of the cursed person is a serious internal injury. If we ignore the damage to the soul caused by the Cruciatus curse, then the damage to the wizard's body by the Cruciatus curse alone is not enough to make it be included in the ranks of the unforgivable curses. People will not be so scared that they dare not go out because of the bumps and bruises in their daily lives, right? Exclamation mark. Chaotic, complicated, fragmented. Lin En murmured in a low voice. That was the feedback given by his legilimency after probing Alice's mind. In Lin En's perception, Alice's soul seemed to be cut into pieces by thousands of sharp blades. Although it was still a whole and retained an independent personality, her soul was already fragmented. Alice's soul was like a pack of instant noodles that was completely crushed in the fierce squeezing and beating, but because of its intact packaging, it maintained its value. Not only that, the soul power that was crushed in the soul shell was entangled together under the influence of an evil black magic, just like a ball of twine tangled together, messy and chaotic. After seeing such a scene, Lin En sighed helplessly. It seems that time travelers can't do everything. Soul magic is really a complex and profound subject. Among the abilities that Lin En has mastered, the only ones related to soul magic are well-known magic such as legilimency and occlumency, as well as soul alchemy methods such as illusion array. As for healing soul trauma, Lin En has no way. Studying soul magic is equivalent to letting Lin En go back 5 years ago and learn alchemy from scratch. If there are Demon King level wizards who have studied in the field of soul magic, then they will definitely not escape Voldemort. However, the other party has studied soul magic for so many years, but what is the result? Exclamation mark. Voldemort chose the most stupid method to split his soul into 7 Horcruxes to escape death and wish for eternal life. This is like a college student who has studied advanced mathematics for more than 10 years, but when faced with a simple question like 1 plus 1, he foolishly gave the answer of 3. They are all very brave heroes, Mrs. Longbottom. Lin En said so. Mrs. Longbottom nodded softly to Lin, and then left with Neville. After learning about Neville's family, everyone had no interest in staying here. Harry stood up and planned to leave the ward. But just as Irina was about to follow everyone out, she saw a glimpse of Irina, which made her frown and stop. What's wrong, Irina? Lin noticed Irina's expression and asked. Irina looked at the ugly plant at the bedside of the patient named Broderick. According to the therapist, this should be a gift from the patient's friend. But if Irina was not mistaken, the plant was not an ordinary Christmas cactus, but a devil's snare. In other words, this was a carefully planned assassination. Chapter 502, The Silent Man Attacked by Death Eaters. Thinking of this, Irina's face suddenly became very ugly. This was not only because an assassination almost happened in front of her eyes, but also because she had studied the knowledge of magic plants with Vivian for so long in the Walterson Magic Botanical Garden, but she almost didn't recognize the species of this devil's snare. She should have recognized the species of this devil's snare before the therapist brought it to Broderick Bode's bedside table. This devil's snare was indeed well disguised. Under the cultivation of its owner, it gradually became closer to ordinary Christmas cactus in appearance. This was the reason why Irina didn't distinguish its species at first glance. Healer. Irina called out to the previous therapist loudly, and Harry and others also cast their eyes over in surprise. The therapist came over quickly and asked, "Is there anything wrong? Please don't make any noise in this ward. The patients need quiet." Irina pointed to the devil's snare on Broderick Bode's bedside table and asked, "Can you tell me the species of that plant?" Hearing this, the therapist was stunned. She looked at the plant that was given to Broderick Bode as a Christmas gift and asked in confusion, "Isn't this a Christmas cactus? I remember it was a Christmas gift from his friend. Is there any problem?" Irina sighed softly, and she walked over and picked up the devil's snare. She raised her wand in her right hand, and a weak flame ignited at the top of her wand. She moved her wand close to the devil's snare. The devil's snare actually trembled visibly, and then retreated in the opposite direction of the flame. "I think you should have identified it. This is a devil's snare, ma'am," Irina said in a deep voice. Hearing Irina's words, the therapist's face turned pale. The moment she saw the devil's snare curled up, she knew the species of the devil's snare. As a healer at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, she had scored full marks in her biology when she graduated from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. But now, she was unable to identify the species of the devil's snare. This was definitely her dereliction of duty. If this matter got serious, she might lose her job or even be tried. After all, people would only see that you put a devil's snare on the patient's bedside table, but not the deeper reasons. "Yes, yes," the healer murmured, and she looked terrified. Irina stuffed the devil's snare into her pocket, which she had cast a traceless stretch spell on, and then asked, "Can you find out the identity of the wizard who sent this devil's snare?" The therapist shook her head and said helplessly, "The package containing this devil's snare did not indicate the identity of the sender. It only stated that it was a Christmas gift for Broderick." At this time, Lin came forward and said, "At this point, I think you should understand that this is a planned and premeditated murder, right? Please find your dean." On the side, after listening to the conversation between several people, Harry and others also became terrified. From the conversation between Lin, Irina and the therapist, Harry and others also understood that they were witnessing a murder. "Okay," the therapist said in panic. "I'll go right away." With that, the therapist ran out of the ward quickly. After the therapist left, Lin looked at Harry and the others and said, "You should be able to see that this is by no means a simple murder. From the identity of this patient, we may be able to find some clues. Does any one of you know him?" Looking at Broderick Bode, Ron couldn't help but feel familiar. Soon, Ron seemed to have thought of something, and he said hesitantly, "When I was at home, I seemed to have heard my father mention him. If I remember correctly, he is a silent man, and he works in the Department of Mysteries." Hearing Ron's words, Harry and Hermione both suddenly realized. With Irina's revelation, Harry understood that Voldemort's goal was to obtain the crystal ball related to the prophecy of that year, and the crystal ball is now stored in the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic. Lin, could it be that? Harry's eyes widened. The assassination of the unspeakable was done by those Death Eaters? Lin said, "We can't draw a conclusion just yet. When the therapist and Dean Bohan come back, we can ask the unspeakable why he was hospitalized. Maybe we can get some clues." Not long after, the therapist came in with a fat middle-aged man. This middle-aged man was the descendant of Mungo Bohan, who founded St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, and he is also the current Dean Bohan of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries. After learning that Broderick Bode was almost assassinated, Dean Bohan looked very anxious. Dean Bohan was not like the therapist, who was devoted to his work and had no time to care about the outside world. He was very familiar with what had happened in the magic world over the years. What's more, Dean Bohan was an old friend of Dumbledore. Therefore, after seeing Lin and Irina in the ward, Dean Bohan recognized their identities. Dean Bohan looked at Lin and Irina and asked, "Mr. Rowe, Miss Lowell, where is the devil's snare that was found?" Irina did not speak. She put her left hand on her waist and the devil's snare appeared in her hand. Dean Bohan just glanced at the devil's snare casually and confirmed the type of devil's snare. He frowned and said, "I didn't expect Mr. Bode to encounter such a thing, even though he was admitted to St. Mungo's. I have to tell Dumbledore about this." Irina keenly grasped the two keywords all, and still in Dean Bohan's words. She immediately understood that there must be something hidden. Irina asked directly, "Dean Bohan, can you tell us why Mr. Bode was admitted to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries?" Hearing Irina's question, Dean Bohan glanced at Harry and others, seeming to be a little hesitant. But after thinking about Lin and Irina's record and Dumbledore's words, that Lin and Irina were trustworthy, Dean Bohan nodded. He said in a deep voice, "To be honest, the reason why Mr. Bode entered St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries was that he was attacked by Death Eaters on his way out of the Department of Mysteries after get off work." Chapter 503, Factionalism in the Ministry of Magic. As Dean Bohan finished speaking, before Lin and Irina had a chance to say anything, Harry exclaimed, "What? So this is really related to the Death Eaters? Then the mastermind behind the attempt to use the devil's snare to kill Mr. Bode is probably also a Death Eater." Lin said calmly, "Mr. Bode has already been admitted to St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries, but those Death Eaters are still determined to kill him. This shows a problem." Irina took up Lin's words and said, "That means when Mr. Bode was working in the Department of Mysteries, he must have learned some secrets that he shouldn't have known, so that those Death Eaters tried every means to silence Mr. Bode." Dean Bohan naturally thought of the problems that Lin and Irina had seen. He frowned and said with a headache, "It would be great if Mr. Bode could regain his sanity and tell the secret. It's a pity that Mr. Bode's brain is seriously injured, and even our most powerful therapist is helpless." After sensing the state of Mr. Bode's soul, Lin nodded silently. Although Mr. Bode's soul injury was not as serious as that of the Longbottoms, the soul power full of cracks was obviously not something Lin could interfere with, not to mention restoring Mr. Bode's damaged soul. If those Death Eaters were here, regardless of Mr. Bode's life or death, and wanted to use legilimency to obtain the secrets in Mr. Bode's mind, I'm afraid Mr. Bode's soul would be completely disintegrated the moment legilimency took effect. Then, Dean Bohan, please contact Professor Dumbledore. Maybe he can find the mastermind behind the scenes. If I'm not mistaken, the Death Eater who carried out the action must have some connection with the Ministry of Magic. Lin said. According to Dean Bohan, Mr. Bode was attacked on the way out of the Department of Mysteries, which means that the attackers are likely to come from within the Ministry of Magic, rather than Death Eaters sneaking into the Ministry to attack. As the factional struggle within the Ministry of Magic intensified, the Ministry of Magic revealed more and more loopholes. If Voldemort wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to place his own undercover agents in the Ministry of Magic, it would be too easy. It can be confirmed that there are no Death Eaters among the Ministry of Magic staff under Old Barty. With the help of the alchemical detection instrument specially made by Lin to detect the dark mark, no Death Eater can escape Old Barty's eyes. Of course, it is not ruled out that Voldemort will specially send those undercover agents who have not yet officially joined the Death Eaters, and have not yet had the dark mark on their arms, but Old Barty is not afraid either. In daily work, whether it is a work report, a leave approval slip, or a worksheet signature, Old Barty always makes his Ministry of Magic staff sign a disguised magic contract in various situations that are hard to guard against. The content of that magic contract is almost the same as the magic contract that Lin asked the DA army to sign. Therefore, all the Death Eaters who dared to lurk under Barty Sr. were caught by Barty Sr. in various ways and executed in places where no one could find them. In Lin's opinion, it was futile to arrest those Death Eaters for public display or to put them in Azkaban prison. Before the war broke out, all they had to do was to consume the enemy's manpower as much as possible, rather than letting the tiger go back to the mountain. Since there would be no Death Eaters under Barty Sr., the problem must be those Fudge's followers. In fact, it is not difficult to find out these Death Eaters. As long as you select those Ministry of Magic employees who are willing to join Fudge's team and become his new followers after Fudge's reputation is completely stinking, you can find out roughly. Perhaps there will be those wizards who are purely greedy for money and fame, and those who choose to submit because of fear of Fudge's power, but it is not difficult to distinguish them. After Dean Bohan sent the letter to Dumbledore, everyone waited in the ward for more than 2 hours. During this time, Harry and others returned downstairs to accompany Mr. Weasley, while Lin and Irina stayed here to continue waiting. Tell me the whole story. Finally, with the flash of fire, Phoenix Fawkes appeared in the wood with a serious-faced Dumbledore. Dumbledore looked at Dean Bohan and said. Dean Bohan told Dumbledore the whole story, including Lin's analysis, that the murderer might come from the Ministry of Magic. So, Dumbledore thought, if the Devil's Snare was sent from the Ministry of Magic, then everything can be traced, and I will also let my friends pay attention to the clues in the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore's subtext is very clear, that is, if the Death Eater did not send the letter in the Ministry of Magic, but ran outside and asked the owl to send the letter, then it would be difficult to find clues based on an unsigned Christmas gift. Irina raised her hand and said, not only that, although according to our plan, the factional struggle in the Ministry of Magic will not end until the end of this school year, we cannot allow so many Death Eaters to lurk in the Ministry of Magic. Lin said, I will let the intelligence network of the Royal family pay attention to the negative intelligence of those Fudge's followers. If those Fudge's followers can be imprisoned, it will not only help Old Barty eliminate dissidents, but also have a certain chance of eliminating the potential Death Eaters. Old Barty could not order those followers who only obeyed Fudge's words. But if those people committed a crime and were to be imprisoned, then Old Barty would naturally have the right to inquire and contact the other party. If it was just an ordinary employee of the Ministry of Magic who committed a crime, then it would naturally be a matter of official business, and Old Barty would not use his authority to maliciously suppress the other party. But if the other party was detected with the dark mark by Lin's alchemical detection instrument, then Old Barty's goal would be very clear, that is, to let this Death Eater die accidentally. After briefly discussing the plan to find the murderer, Dumbledore turned his gaze to Dean Bohan. He said gently, Old Bohan, I think you should be able to see that St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries is not so safe nowadays. Dean Bohan nodded. He sighed and said, yes, the methods of those Death Eaters are hard to guard against. This time it was the Devil's Snare pretending to be a Christmas gift. What about next time? Dumbledore said gently, I plan to set up some defensive magic, detection magic and early warning magic in this ward. What do you think? The only person who can make the decision at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries is Dean Bohan in front of him. Even Dumbledore, the greatest white wizard of this century, needs to seek Dean Bohan's consent if he wants to set up magic in this ward. Chapter 504, Henry's Last Letter. However, knowing that this ward was not as safe as imagined, and Dumbledore was willing to take action himself, how could Dean Bohan disagree? Exclamation mark. Dean Bohan said quickly, of course, Dumbledore, the security loopholes of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Maladies are my fault, and it is an honor for St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Maladies that you are willing to personally fix the loopholes. Dumbledore smiled and nodded, then waved his wand, and 3 magics flew out in an instant, and merged into the floor, walls and ceiling of the room. The protective magic among these 3 magics is simple, just some means to prevent intruders from breaking into the ward and hurting patients. The second detection magic is able to detect all things that contain magical power, including wizards, magic props, magical animals and magical plants. Once something with magical power enters the ward, this detection magic will automatically run to detect the safety of these things. This detection magic can determine whether these things containing magical power are safe. If the other party is just a harmless sniff, the detection magic will only inform the therapist of the test results in the form of magic text. If the other party is a dangerous thing like the Devil's Snare, poisonous tentacles and Chinese biting cabbage, then the third warning magic will automatically take effect, notifying all the therapists on the floor, as well as old Bohan, the director of St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Injuries and Maladies. Under the arrangement of these 3 magics, the safety of this ward can be said to be full. After arranging these 3 magics, Dumbledore asked Irina for the Devil's Snare, and then used Fox's flame apparition to leave. The Christmas holiday passed quickly. In the past few days, Lin took Irina to have a good time in the French magic world, and after obtaining the consent of Madame Maxim, he and Irina visited Bogsburton's School of Magic again. After leaving Bogsburton's School of Magic, Irina obtained Vivian's consent in advance through letters, and took Lin to Walterson Magical Botanical Garden. With Vivian's warm welcome, Irina and Lin stayed in Walterson Magical Botanical Garden for 2 days, which opened Lin's eyes. At first, Irina was worried that Vivian would be dissatisfied with her bringing other people to Walterson Magical Botanical Garden, a place that should be kept secret from the world. However, after meeting Vivian, Irina realized that she was worrying too much. After learning that Lin and Irina were in a relationship, Vivian's enthusiasm for Lin was almost catching up with the last time she came here with Newt. Vivian also curiously asked when Lin and Irina planned to hold their wedding, which made both of them blush and embarrassed to speak. When Lin and Irina returned from their trip to France and Germany, they learned the good news that Mr. Weasley had recovered. After the formula for neutralizing the snake venom was developed, and the venom on Mr. Weasley was removed, Mr. Weasley's injuries, which were not serious to begin with, healed immediately with the help of magic. Mr. Weasley was discharged from the hospital on the same night the venom was neutralized and returned to 12 Grimmauld Place. On this day, there were still 3 days before the start of school. After learning that Mr. Weasley had recovered, Lin and Irina immediately went to 12 Grimmauld Place to congratulate Mr. Weasley on his recovery. Congratulations on your recovery, Mr. Weasley, Irina said to Mr. Weasley. Mr. Weasley smiled and nodded to Irina. He looked very happy. Irina smiled and said, since you have recovered, please don't forget what we agreed on before. Hearing this, Mr. Weasley was stunned, and then suddenly said, oh, you mean to investigate the Horcruxes of Voldemort? Okay, I will pay attention to it, but I have been in this house these days. There can't be Horcruxes in this house, right? Lin said meaningfully, maybe. In short, don't take it lightly. After briefly explaining to Mr. Weasley, the two left with peace of mind. They believed that Mr. Weasley should be able to find the Horcrux Slytherin locket located in the Black Ancestral home. However, Lin and Irina miscalculated. 2 days passed until the last day of the Christmas holiday. They still couldn't get any news about the whereabouts of the Horcruxes from Mr. Weasley. The two finally couldn't hold back, and they went to number 12 Grimmauld Place in person and searched the Black Ancestral home in person under the puzzled eyes of Harry and others. Lin En even took out the alchemy detector Nico gave him and tested the magic props in the Black Ancestral house, but still could not find the whereabouts of Slytherin's locket. This made Lin En's expression a little distorted. If his memory was correct, then in this timeline, Slytherin's locket should still be in the Black Ancestral house. In this timeline, Mundungus Fletcher should not have had time to steal Slytherin's locket. After searching in vain, Lin En finally thought of the last solution, which was to directly ask Kreacher, the house elf who participated in the whole incident that year. Lin En found a reason and took Kreacher to an empty room. "Kreacher, can you please tell me the whereabouts of Slytherin's locket? Or the whereabouts of Voldemort's Horcrux?" Lin En asked directly. Hearing Lin En's words, Kreacher's eyes suddenly became a little terrified. Kreacher immediately said, "Kreacher doesn't know what a locket is, nor does he know what a Horcrux is. Kreacher is just a house elf." As he said this, Kreacher covered his ears with his hands and made a grumbling appearance. Lin was not surprised by Kreacher's attitude. He sighed and said, "Kreacher, I'm Henry Row's son. I hope to know about my father. I think you should know where the Slytherin locket is." 4 years ago, when Dumbledore told Lin about his life experience and showed him the last letter from Lin's father, Henry Rowe, Lin guessed that his father's death might be related to Voldemort's Horcrux. "Regulus Black found me and wanted to take me to a place where there were weapons that could defeat Voldemort." That was the last letter left by his father, Henry Rowe, before he died. If Lin guessed correctly, the place in the letter refers to the cave where the Horcruxes are stored, and the weapon that can defeat Voldemort may refer to the Horcrux Slytherin locket. Chapter 505 Master Regulus asks Kreacher to go home. "You are Master Regulus' friend, Master Henry Row's son?" Kreacher looked at Lin in surprise. Everyone in the Black Ancestral home called Lin by his first name, not his last name. Although Lin and his father Henry Rowe looked a bit alike, it was not enough for Kreacher to associate Lin with Henry Rowe. Lin nodded, and he opened his wizard robe, showing Kreacher a badge on the inside of his wizard robe that represented the Rowe family's identity. After seeing the badge representing the Rowe family, Kreacher finally believed it. The Rowe family badge could prove that Lin was a member of the Rowe family, and now the Rowe family only had Henry Rowe's lineage. In addition, Lin and Henry looked very similar, so the figures of Lin and Henry gradually overlapped in Kreacher's eyes. "Master Rowe, but didn't you take the Slytherin locket away?" Kreacher muttered absent-mindedly. After a while, it came back to its senses, but in Kreacher's eyes, Lin seemed to have become the Hindley Rowe of the past. Therefore, Kreacher's eyes became confused, and it asked, "What?" Suddenly, Sirius pushed the door open from outside. Slytherin locket, and Hindley, and Regulus. After discovering that Lin had called Kreacher away alone, Sirius thought that Kreacher had offended Lin, so Lin had called Kreacher away. He even rushed over to reprimand Kreacher. However, when he arrived at the door of the room, he heard something that shocked him. This made Sirius subconsciously stay at the door and listen to the conversation in the room. After learning that one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, the Slytherin locket, was related to his younger brother Regulus Black, and was taken away by his former comrade Hindley Rowe before his death, and now missing, Sirius could no longer hold back. At this time, Lin did not care about Sirius who broke into the room, and Irina and Harry who followed him in. He just looked at Kreacher with a heavy face and asked, "Are you sure that the Slytherin locket was finally taken away by my father?" From the last letter Hindley left before his death, Lin could judge that his father Hindley must have gone to the cave where Voldemort stored the Horcrux with Regulus, and found the Horcrux. However, Regulus Black completely lost contact after that day, and the news of Hindley Rowe's death also came after that day. This means that Regulus is likely to stay in the cave forever, just like in the original book. His father, Hindley, died at the hands of Voldemort after leaving the cave. However, if Lin remembered correctly, there was a gap of nearly 3 days between Hindley Rao leaving the cave and Hindley Rao being killed by Voldemort. The 3-day gap made it difficult for Lin to determine whether Hindley was killed by Voldemort because he hid the Slytherin locket, which made Voldemort furious and killed him. Or did Voldemort find the Slytherin locket from Hindley, and after taking the locket away, he killed the rebellious Hindley? If it was the former, then Lin could still rely on the clues left by Hindley to find the whereabouts of the Slytherin locket, and maybe he could find it before Voldemort and destroy it. But if it was the latter, it meant that the Slytherin locket had long been in Voldemort's hands, and Voldemort might find a more hidden place to hide it. In that case, they would lose all clues about Slytherin's locket, and become headless flies. They would not even be able to destroy the Horcrux in the end, let alone kill Voldemort forever. Just as Lin was praying frantically in his heart that the truth of the matter was the former, Sirius seemed to realize the seriousness of the matter and looked at Kreacher with a serious look. Sirius said in a deep voice, "Kreacher, as your master, I order you to tell us the whole story, in full and without missing a word." As Sirius's voice fell, Kreacher's movements trembled. According to Kreacher's original intention, it was absolutely unwilling to tell the truth of the matter to Sirius, who was indirectly responsible for the death of Master Regulus. But now Sirius is Kreacher's only master, and Kreacher, as a house elf, must obey the master's orders, which makes it struggle constantly. In the end, Kreacher curled up into a ball, clamped his face between his knees, and spoke in a low voice. Master Sirius ran away, and it's a good thing he ran away, because he is a bad boy, and his unruly behavior broke my mistress's heart. But Master Regulus has self-esteem, he knows what the black surname and his pure blood mean. For many years he often talked about the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord wants wizards to no longer have to hide, and can come out, to rule muggles and muggle descendants. When Master Regulus was 16, he joined the Dark Lord's organization. He was so proud, so happy to be able to serve. Kreacher said, but Sirius snorted coldly, and disdain was shown on his face. Obviously, Sirius was very dissatisfied with his brother who joined the Death Eaters, and was also unhappy that Kreacher admired his brother so much. However, Kreacher did not stop his statement. He continued, 1 year later, one day, Master Regulus came to the kitchen to visit Kreacher. Master Regulus has always liked Kreacher. Master Regulus said, he said that the Dark Lord wants a house elf. Hearing Kreacher's words, Sirius subconsciously interrupted. Voldemort wants an elf? In Sirius's opinion, with Voldemort's contempt for wizards other than pure-blood wizards, and even other races, it is impossible for the other party to need a house elf. Oh, yes, Kreacher said painfully. Master Regulus contributed Kreacher. This is an honor, Master Regulus said. It is the honor of himself and Kreacher. Kreacher must do everything the Dark Lord wants him to do, and then go home. Kreacher's body shook, and his breathing turned into short but continuous sobs. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506, The Truth of That Year, The Whereabouts of Slytherin Locket. So, Kreacher went to the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord did not tell Kreacher what to do, but took Kreacher to a cave by the sea. It was a big cave with a big black lake in it. In the lake, there was a boat. In the center of the lake there was an island, and on the island there was a stone basin filled with potion. The Dark Lord asked Kreacher to drink. Kreacher spoke intermittently. Sirius, Harry and the others all held their breath and pricked up their ears to listen to Kreacher's words. They understood that what Kreacher said might be the hiding place of Voldemort's Horcrux. Kreacher drank it and saw many horrible scenes while drinking it. Kreacher's internal organs were on fire. Kreacher called Master Regulus to save him and called the mistress, but the Dark Lord just laughed. He forced Kreacher to drink up the potion. He threw a locket into the empty basin and filled the basin with potion. Then, the Dark Lord boarded the boat and left, leaving Kreacher on the island. Kreacher trembled in pain, and it said so. Slytherin locket. Sirius stood up suddenly, and he shouted, "Is that one of Voldemort's Horcruxes?" Creature did not answer, but continued. Creature needed water. Creature climbed to the edge of the island to drink the water in the black lake. Many hands, dead hands, stretched out from the water and dragged Creature down. Creature trembled even more, and Harry walked over and asked, "So, how did you leave? I think there should be an anti-apparition charm in that cave." Both Regulus Black and Henry Rao mastered the silent casting skills of apparition. If there was no anti-apparition charm in that cave, then the two of them would definitely be able to escape unscathed. Therefore, even Harry could infer that there was an anti-apparition charm in that cave, or even more advanced magic. Creature was stunned for a moment, and said in a dreamy tone, "Master Regulus said that Creature should go home. The highest law of house elves is the master's order." The master told Creature to go home, and Creature went home. Seeing that Harry was still a little confused, Irina explained softly, "I think, with Voldemort's arrogance towards races like house elves, he may not consider that house elves possess magic that he does not have, and he will not believe that a house elf will resist him. Therefore, the magic arranged by Voldemort in the cave is likely to be only used to guard against wizards." After hearing Irina's explanation, not only Harry, but also Ron and Hermione who followed in, and Sirius who was also confused, showed a look of enlightenment. Sirius continued to press, "So, what happened after you came back? You told Regulus about it, right?" Creature said hoarsely, "Yes." Creature had to tell Master Regulus about it, and Master Regulus knew about it. Master Regulus was very worried, very worried. Regulus told Creature to hide and not leave the house. Then, after a while, one night, Master Regulus came to the cupboard and found Creature. Master Regulus came with Master Henry Rao of the Rao family. They looked very strange and worried, and Creature could see that Master Regulus was in a mess. Master Regulus asked Creature to take him and Master Rao to the cave that Creature and the Dark Lord had been to. Creature recounted what happened that year. After Regulus and Hindley found Creature, Regulus ordered Creature to use the house elves' unique apparition skill to bring them to the cave. Creature then took the two of them one by one on a boat across the lake to the island in the middle of the lake. Lin asked in a deep voice, "Then, Regulus Black and my father got the Slytherin locket, right?" Creature nodded with sobs and continued, "Yes, Master Regulus took out a locket from his pocket, the same as the Dark Lord's, and he asked Creature to take it, and after the stone basin was dry, swap the lockets. Master Regulus said, he said, that was the payment for the sins he committed over the years. It was redemption. He drank all the potions by himself." Creature swapped the lockets. Master Regulus asked Creature to give the locket to Master Rao. He asked Creature to take Master Rao away, but Creature watched Master Regulus being dragged under the water, and then Creature burst into tears and could no longer speak. Lin and Irina looked solemnly. From Creature's words, they were able to restore the truth of the world back then. After Regulus Black discovered Voldemort's true identity, he planned to destroy the Slytherin locket and Voldemort's Horcrux. At that time, he knew that he might not be able to take the Horcrux away safely, so he chose to ask the Order of the Phoenix for help. However, Regulus also understood that most people in the Order of the Phoenix had great malice and distrust towards him as a Death Eater. In Regulus's view, the only person in the Order of the Phoenix who might trust him was perhaps Henry Rao, who graduated from Slytherin College like him, and had a relatively friendly intersection. Therefore, Regulus sent a letter for help to Rowell Manor. Henry Rao, who received the letter, understood the urgency of the matter. He did not ask much, but left the last letter of his life, and then left Rowell Manor, and participated in the operation with Regulus and Creature. Regulus believed that he had joined the Death Eaters, and no matter whether he had done those evil things, the sin of aiding and abetting was inevitable, and he drank the poison alone, perhaps to atone for the sins he had committed. So, Regulus refused the help of Hindley and Creature, drank the potion that was enough to drive people crazy, and was eventually dragged into the water by the inferi and died. Hindley Rowe, who was still conscious, left the cave with the real Slytherin locket under Creature's apparition. So, now the final suspense about what happened back then is the final destination of the Slytherin locket. Chapter 507, Slytherin locket hidden in Rowell Castle. Creature, you said that my father took the Slytherin locket, and my father was killed by Voldemort after that incident. So, do you remember how long it took for my father to take the Slytherin locket and for the news of my father's death to be announced? Lin stared at Creature and asked in a deep voice. Hearing Lin's words, Creature was stunned for a moment and then said in a low voice, after Master Regulus died, Creature followed Master Regulus's orders and did not go anywhere in the house, but 3 days later, Creature heard that Master Owl was killed by the Dark Lord. Creature was afraid. Creature was worried that Master Regulus' efforts would be in vain. Creature did not dare to leave the house and hid in the cupboard for 7 days and 7 nights, almost starving to death. Creature muttered to himself. 3 days. Lin pondered. He looked at Irina, Sirius and others, and said, if there was a gap of 3 days between these two events, then even if my father failed to destroy Voldemort's Horcrux, he must have been able to hide it from Voldemort. Therefore, it can be inferred that my father's death was caused by the exposure of the Horcrux, which made Voldemort furious and killed him, but Voldemort was not able to get the Horcrux from my father. The location of the Horcrux must be a place with sufficient security guarantees. If I'm not mistaken, in order for someone to destroy the Horcrux in the future, the Horcrux must have been placed by someone in the Order of the Phoenix, or a place that Dumbledore could know. There are not many such places, not to mention that my father has been to very limited places after taking away the Slytherin locket. Lin analyzed. Voldemort cannot reach it. It has sufficient security. The Order of the Phoenix, especially Dumbledore, knows about it, and the place where Henry Rowell went after leaving the cave. After screening these 4 conditions, the answer is already obvious. Irina blurted out, Roll Castle? Yes, after Dumbledore personally served as the secret keeper and arranged the Fidelius charm for Rowell Manor, the safety of Rowell Manor has been sufficiently guaranteed. Under the protection of the Fidelius charm, even if Voldemort killed Henry Rowell, he could not enter Rowell Manor. This is also the main guarantee for Irina to escape Voldemort's pursuit and give birth to Lin smoothly. After Henry Rowell took the Slytherin locket from the cave, due to his undercover identity, it was difficult for him to contact the Order of the Phoenix in a short period of time, and the day he returned to the Death Eater's residence was likely to be his death. Then, the only place Henry could reach in those 3 days or even shorter time was Rowell Castle. When Lin En heard Irina mention Rowell Castle, his heart was moved. Having lived in Rowell Castle for more than 10 years, Lin En could be said to be very familiar with Rowell Castle. He also knew that Voldemort's Horcruxes did not exist in the places he had visited. In this way, if the Slytherin locket was really in Rowell Castle, then there would only be one place for it to be hidden, and that was the 5th floor of Rowell Castle, where the road was sealed by ancient magic. As early as 3 years ago, when Lin En invited Irina to Rowell Castle for Christmas, he asked his mother Irina about the 5th floor of Rowell Castle, but Irina avoided talking about it. I guess it was because Irina wanted to protect him, who was still a little wizard at the time. After figuring it out, Lin En no longer concealed it, but said to everyone in the room, to be honest, since I was born, I have only been to the first 4 floors of Rowell Castle, and I have never been to the top floor of Rowell Castle, which is the 5th floor. The staircase from the 4th floor to the 5th floor of Rowell Castle is sealed by a very ancient magic. I was unable to break the seal before, and I didn't plan to break the seal rashly. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Slytherin locket is probably hidden in the sealed 5th floor. Lin En said so. Irina took out 2 spoons from her pocket and handed one of them to Lin En. It was the random door key she made. These 2 random door keys were authorized by Lin En, the owner of Rowell Castle, and could ignore the protective magic of Rowell Manor and directly reach the 1st floor hall of Rowell Castle. Then, Lin En and I will go ahead and find the Slytherin locket, Irina said. Hearing this, Sirius Black stepped forward and said, I'll go too. I can help. Besides, my brother Regulus is also 4. Harry also nodded, and he looked at Lin and Irina with eager eyes. Seeing this, Lin shook his head and said, Irina and I are enough. The way to destroy the Horcrux is very simple. Fiendfire or the fangs of the basilisk can be used. The reason why my father didn't destroy it directly back then was probably because he didn't recognize it as a Horcrux. In the original book, Regulus Black only knew that the Slytherin locket was Voldemort's life-saving guarantee and a Horcrux that could defeat Voldemort, but he didn't know it was a Horcrux. Otherwise, Regulus in the original book would not have let a house elf-like creature destroy the Slytherin locket. There are countless black magic props in the magic world, and not all black magic props can be destroyed by Fiendfy. There are even cursed props in the magic world that can be detonated by Fiendfy. Therefore, although Henry Rowell mastered the Fiendfy spell, he did not rashly use it on the Slytherin locket, but took the safest means to seal it on the 5th floor of Rowell Castle. After hearing Lin's words, Sirius and Harry both lowered their heads in disappointment. However, they did not say much. After all, Lin and Irina were the most authoritative in dealing with Voldemort. 2 white lights lit up in succession, and Lin and Irina disappeared in the black ancestral home. The next moment, in the living room on the 1st floor of Rowell Castle, Rowena, who was holding a fruit plate and watching the magic TV, looked at the 2 people who suddenly appeared in the living room with some surprise. Rowena asked, "Didn't you go to visit Black and the others? Why are you back?" Lin shook his head. He didn't answer Rowena's question, but came to her and asked seriously, "Mom, can you tell me, was the seal leading to the 5th floor of Rowell Castle set by my father before he was killed by Voldemort?" Rowena was stunned, but she soon figured it out. Her eyes became softer. She nodded gently and said, "Yes. Chapter 508 Elemental Magic. I understand. Thank you, Mom." Lin said so. After learning that the seal of the ancient magic leading to the 5th floor of Rowell Castle was set by Henry Rowe before he was killed by Voldemort, Lin was able to determine that the Slytherin locket was on the 5th floor of Rowell Castle. Lin did not hesitate. He took Irina to the staircase leading to the 5th floor from the 4th floor of Rowell Castle, and Rowena followed. Rowena only remembered that when Henry came back, his face was solemn, holding something that exuded an evil aura in his hand, and he hurried up to the 5th floor and set up the seal of the ancient magic when he left. She did not know what the evil aura was. She only knew that her husband, after doing that thing and leaving Rowell Castle, never came back. Therefore, Rowena could guess that it was a very dangerous thing, which was why she avoided talking about it 3 years ago and was unwilling to tell Lin about the origin of this ancient magic seal. Now, Lin En is already a Demon King level wizard, and he is not inferior to Voldemort in the Battle of Little Hangleton Village. He has already mastered the ability to protect himself. Therefore, Rowena no longer hides it from Lin En, but instead hopes that Lin En can reveal the truth of the past, so that she can know why her husband died. Looking at the ancient magic seal in front of him, that is constantly emitting magical fluctuations, Lin En just smiled slightly and slowly pushed his palm towards the seal. This seal is just composed of relatively ancient magic, not ancient magic. Although there is only one word difference between ancient magic and ancient magic, their power is very different. Ancient magic is full of mysteries. Even a Demon King level wizard may not be able to unlock the ancient magic released by ordinary wizards. But although ancient magic is a long-standing magic, it ultimately belongs to the category of modern magic. Its rules are difficult to crack, but it is not as mysterious as ancient magic. Even though Lin En didn't know how to break the seal, he could still forcefully break it with his powerful magic power as a Demon King level wizard. The huge magic power continuously bombarded the seal. Under the bombardment of the magic power that was as turbulent as the ocean, the seal was like a lone sail in the sea, swaying non-stop, and it seemed that it could break at any time. Seeing this, Lin En increased the output of magic power again. The Demon King level magic power condensed into substance, turned into a sharp blade, and fiercely slashed at the seal that also manifested its shape. The next moment, thousands of cracks spread, and the seal, that had been maintained for more than 16 years, exploded and dissipated into dots of light at the stairs. "The road is open," Irina said happily. Lin En raised his right hand, and his magic wand appeared in his palm. He walked towards the 5th floor of Rowell Castle. When the three arrived at the 5th floor of Rowell Castle, Lin En and Irina were surprised to find that the layout here was similar to that of the 4th floor, but the overall area was much smaller. In front of the three were 5 bookshelves, all of which were made of precious metals. Lin En could feel the strong magical fluctuations from these 5 bookshelves. Every book on these 5 bookshelves seemed to contain special power, just like the books that recorded ancient magic in the crystal cabinets of Fly Castle. On both sides of these 5 bookshelves, there were 2 rows of crystal display cabinets, which contained very precious magic or alchemical creations. The value of each exhibit here was equal to all the collections on the 4th floor of Roll Castle. In fact, the 5th floor of Rao Castle, like the 4th floor, houses the Rao family's magic books and various magic props for hundreds of years, as well as the relics left by their ancestors. But compared to the 4th floor, the collection on the 5th floor is much more valuable. Although the dark magic books on the 4th floor of Rao Castle are profound, most of them are semi-public dark magic and curses in the magic world, but the magic books on the 5th floor of Rao Castle are unique, just like the ancient magic books of Fly Castle, the alchemy magic books of the Weirlie family, and the blood magic books of the Potter family. Rowena seemed to have noticed the doubts of Lin and Irina, and she explained to them with a smile. I see, Lin suddenly realized. Then what are the exclusive collections of our Rao family? I think it should not only be dark magic books, right? Lin and Irina had both studied the dark magic hidden on the 4th floor of Rao Castle, including the 3 unforgivable curses. At that time, Lin En felt a little confused. Whether it was the ancient magic books of the Fly family, the alchemy magic books of the Weirlie family, or the blood magic books of the Potter family, they were all unique and absolutely confidential collections in the entire magic world. But the black magic that Lin En and Irina learned on the 4th floor of the Rao family was something that the outside world could also get a glimpse of, such as the 3 unforgivable spells, the fiery curse, and various curses. Although these were all advanced black magic, if it was to be as famous as the collections of the previous families with its advanced black magic, Lin En still felt that it was a bit unworthy of the name. Now, after coming to the 5th floor of Rao Castle, and seeing those magic books whose magic fluctuations could be sensed from a long distance, Lin En finally understood. It turns out that the treasures of the Rao family are all here. Rowena smiled and nodded, saying, yes, the rumors about the black magic books of the Lua family are true, but the magic books inherited by the Lua family are not just black magic books. The most valuable wealth of the Lua family is our elemental magic books. Rowena pointed to the 5 bookshelves. Elemental magic? Lin En and Irina asked in unison, their eyes widened, as if they had heard something incredible. You know, whether it is the description of ancient magic in the ancient magic books they saw in the Free Castle, or the word element in these elemental magic books, they are very similar to the Eastern cultivation culture. But, this should be a magical world. Rowena nodded affirmatively and said, yes, elemental magic. Among these 5 bookshelves, only the first bookshelf contains books on black magic, the second bookshelf contains books on curses, and the other 3 bookshelves are all books on elemental magic. According to the wizard's classification of the so-called element, we classify water, ice, fire, soil, and breeze as natural element, light and darkness as mysterious element, and space and time as regular element. Rowena introduced them to the 2. Thanks to the book friend MWPTQD for the 500 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. Chapter 509. She had already lost her husband and didn't want to lose more. Lin and Irina both cast their eyes thoughtfully at the 5 bookshelves. According to Rowena, the magic books on the last 3 bookshelves might be related to natural element, mysterious element, and rule element. Natural element, mysterious element, and rule element. Is this how the Western magic world views the word element? That is different from the Eastern theory of the 5 element and yin and yang. Lin thought about it, but he soon put the matter aside. He naturally would not forget that the purpose of coming to the 5th floor of Rao Castle was not for these elemental magic books, but for the Slytherin locket hidden there. Lin waved the wand in his hand slightly, and as the magic power spread in all directions, Lin's perception also enveloped the entire room. Soon, Lin sensed the evil breath of the Horcrux that was exactly the same as Tom Riddle's diary behind the first bookshelf where the dark magic books were placed. Lin En walked slowly to the bookshelf. Following the position of the Slytherin locket that his magic sense told him, he stretched out his left hand and touched a slightly protruding magic book. In fact, this magic book seemed to be just a decoration. Lin En did not feel any magic fluctuations from it. Obviously, this was a simple mechanism. Lin En gently pulled out the magic book. Behind the magic book with no words on the cover, Lin En saw a small locket. On this locket, there was a snake-shaped S made of emerald. Got it, the Slytherin locket. Lin En raised his hand and pulled out the Slytherin locket. He turned around and showed the locket in his hand to Irina and Rowena. Rowena narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the Slytherin locket in Lin's hand with a dazed look. She asked, "Is this the Slytherin locket? Voldemort's Horcrux? Henry died because of this thing." Lin nodded heavily and said, "I think so. There is a piece of Voldemort's soul in the Slytherin locket. Let's destroy the entire locket directly. Mom, do you want to come?" Lin looked at Rowena with an inquiring look. This Horcrux of Voldemort killed not only Lin's father, but also Rowena's husband. Lin and Henry had never met, and Henry had never accompanied him to grow up. This led to the fact that, even if he recognized his father, he would not have too deep feelings for Henry, because he had received his mother's love, and was not lacking in love. But Rowena was different. She was with Henry when she was still studying at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and they got married immediately after graduation. In terms of feelings for Henley, I'm afraid no one can compare to Rowena. Therefore, it is most appropriate for Rowena to destroy the Horcrux that killed Hindley. Well, Rowena nodded gently, with a little sadness and relief in her eyes. "Let me do it." Rowena took the Slytherin locket from Lin. As soon as she got the Slytherin locket, Rowena felt an evil aura spreading from her hands, trying to affect her mind, making her more irritable and irritable. Rowena frowned, and there was some disgust in her eyes. It was this shameful thing that killed her husband. A ball of fierce fire ignited from the palm of her hand holding the Slytherin locket, and it enveloped the Slytherin locket at lightning speed. While Lin told Rowena about the information about Voldemort's Horcrux, he also told Rowena how to destroy the Horcrux. Therefore, Rowena, who already had the Fiendfy spell, chose to use it to destroy the Horcrux without hesitation. As the red and black Fiendfy penetrated into the Slytherin locket like a thorn in the flesh, destroying everything in the locket, a sharp, miserable, and fierce scream came out of the locket. The scream echoed throughout the room, causing Rowena and Irina to frown unconsciously. Lin still stared at the Slytherin locket being destroyed expressionlessly, and his demon-level magic locked the aura of the Slytherin locket. Once there was any abnormal movement in the locket, he would be able to control the power of the locket in the first place, to prevent Voldemort's Horcrux from harming his mother. However, the locket wrapped and burned by the Fiendfire obviously had no room for resistance. As the foul-smelling black liquid flowed from the broken Slytherin locket, the sharp scream gradually disappeared. The fragments of the Slytherin locket slipped from Rowena's hands and fell to the ground, making a series of metal collision sounds. The evil aura that belonged to the Horcrux completely disappeared under the destruction of the Fiendfy. The Slytherin locket has been destroyed. Counting the diary from 3 years ago, Voldemort still has 5 Horcruxes. Lin said so. Hearing Lin's words, Rowena asked in surprise, "What? Voldemort made 7 Horcruxes? That's crazy. But how did you get this number?" Before Lin could speak, Irina replied with a smile. "In the wizarding world, 7 is a magical number, isn't it? Voldemort pursues immortality, so he will do everything he can to achieve this goal, and the magical number 7 will be his final choice." Rowena frowned and said, "So, is this just your guess? When it comes to Voldemort's Horcruxes, you must act rigorously. Even if you misjudge a number, it will be a huge mistake." Lin smiled and said, "Mom, you don't have to worry about these. What's more, this is the result of our discussion with Professor Dumbledore." Hearing this, Rowena finally nodded and said, "Dumbledore thinks so too? Well, in this area, I'm indeed not as good as you, but you must be careful." Rowena seemed to want to say something, but she kept her mouth shut. In the end, Rowena just looked deeply at Lin En and Irina, and after telling them to go downstairs to eat at dinner time, she walked down the stairs she came from. She had already lost her only husband, and she didn't want to lose her only son and future daughter-in-law. Chapter 510. One law makes all laws clear. After dealing with the Horcrux Slytherin locket, Lin En and Irina were finally able to focus on the 5 bookshelves in the room. I didn't expect that what their all family had truly passed down for hundreds of years was not the profound black magic, but the elemental magic. It's really hidden. Lin En smiled and walked forward to the bookshelf where the elemental magic books classified as natural element were placed. Irina had a bit of surprise on her face, and she said, the only magic related to the ice element in the magic world is the freezing spell, and I was worried that this would make my bloodline talent useless. After obtaining the ancient magic ice phantom from Iwin's family, my bloodline talent has already been greatly developed. I thought the ice phantom was the limit of the benefits that the western magic world could bring to my ice element affinity talent, but I never expected, Lin En, that your family actually has a special collection of elemental magic books that record ice element magic. I hope it can improve my understanding of ice element magic. If I can use it to advance to the Demon King level, it would be great. Irina said so. Using the elemental magic books here to improve your understanding of elemental magic and advance to the level of Demon King? Not only Irina, but even Lin En has such an idea. Although Lin En is already a Demon King level wizard, his lack of understanding of fire magic is his weakness. After learning that there is a way like Dumbledore to get on the bus first and buy the ticket later, Lin En has been trying to improve his attainments in fire magic. Zhui Xianhou is his greatest achievement in this period of time. But Zhui Xianhou alone is not enough for Lin En to understand fire magic to the level of Demon King. Therefore, after learning that there are magic books about elemental magic in his castle, Lin En's surprise can be said to be unparalleled. This bookshelf has a total of 4 layers, which are respectively placed with magic books corresponding to the 4 natural element of water, ice, fire, soil, and breeze. Irina excitedly pulled out a magic book called The Nature of Ice Element and its Magic Reaction Theory from the top of the bookshelf and read it with relish. Although water and ice are the same element, wizards always discuss water and ice separately when discussing their essence and application methods, which also allows Irina to find the books she wants more smoothly. Lin En pulled out a magic book called The Essence of Flame and its magic structure from the second layer of the bookshelf and read it carefully. This magic book that records the element of fire looks very shabby. It must have been created several centuries ago, and that time was very close to the stage when the magic world still used ancient magic. Therefore, the value of these elemental magic books is probably not inferior to those magic books that record ancient magic. Flipping through the magic books in his hand, the astonishment in Lin En's eyes became deeper and deeper. This magic book called The Essence of Flame and its magic structure seemed to open the door to a new world for him in the field of fire magic. In today's magic world, the study of various kinds of magic is only about what kind of spells to chant, what kind of gestures to wave, and what kind of thoughts to use to better perform a certain kind of magic. Even for flame magic, Lin En's understanding only stayed at this level. Even though Lin En mastered the silent and wandless casting of flame magic, it was only relying on the flame affinity talent in his blood, which was more like the so-called power of my thinking. Magic is idealistic, and there is no special process for Lin En to summon flames. He wanted flames, so he summoned flames. But is it true that magic only has causes and results, and no process? Exclamation mark. This magic book called The Essence of Flame and its magic structure gave Lin En the answer. Unlike the magic books commonly circulated in the magic world, which only record the principles, spells, casting gestures and casting techniques of spells, this magic book explained to Lin En in detail the transformation between flames and magic power. In other words, magic flames are a special kind of magic power. The magic flames transformed from magic power are themselves a special form of magic power, just like the purple myrtle sky fire transformed from the power of stars, which is essentially a special form of star power. Lin En used his mind to transform magic power into magic flames, which was a process of deconstructing and reconstructing magic power through its components, and the act of constructing magic power into magic flames. When the magic book explained this step, weak magic power spread out from the magic book and turned into a 3-dimensional figure, intuitively evolving the process of magic power into flames for Lin En. I saw a group of invisible magic power slowly rising from the magic book, but under the influence of another kind of magic. This group of magic power, which should have been invisible, actually showed a blue color. This allowed Lin En to see any changes in this group of magic power with his naked eyes. Then, this group of magic power was constantly transformed under the control of a strange force, and gradually turned into a burning flame. At the same time as this group of magic power changed, the pattern on the page was also changing. But the pattern on the page was not the group of magic power that Lin En saw with his naked eyes, but the magic power from a microscopic perspective. If we use the so-called DNA in the muggle world as an analogy, then the original magic flame, magic ice and even all forms of magic are a DNA molecule, and the difference between them lies in the different gene sequences on this DNA molecule. It is also because of this that the initial magic can be transformed into various forms of magic such as flame, ice, wind, spring, etc. after the gene sequence is reordered. And this page of the magic book shows Lin En the magic structure of the magic flame, or the gene sequence. As long as it is set according to this gene sequence, even if Lin En has no idea of summoning fire in his mind, he wants a piece of ice in his mind, and recites the spell of clear water like spring. He can also summon magic flame. The idea, spell, gesture, and technique are all wrong, but the correct result can be obtained. This is the magic of the magic structure. One method leads to all methods. Flame can be obtained in this way, so what about other magic? Lin En felt that he seemed to have entered a state of enlightenment. He felt that the essence of this world seemed to be waving to him. For wizards from pure blood families in the magic world, it would be extremely difficult to understand the concepts in this magic book. But Lin En, who had studied muggle biology, was able to understand this concept very well by comparing it to DNA. Just like when he was learning alchemy, he compared the alchemy array to a circuit diagram. Chapter 511. The magical structure of magical flame. Any form of magic in the magic world is essentially the product of the original magic after construction. By deconstructing and reconstructing these products, another product of construction can be obtained. Thinking of this, Lin En cast his eyes on the torch on the wall of the room. The flame burning on the torch was a cluster of goblet fairy fire, which was why it could burn until now without anyone taking care of it and not extinguished. Lin En raised his hand and reached out to the cluster of goblet fairy fire in the void. After learning the concept of this magic book, the cluster of goblet fairy fire in Lin En's eyes seemed to no longer be a cluster of flames flashing with brilliant golden light, but a very complex magic creation with magic factors that have been arranged and combined countless times. The strange power was released as Lin En's mind moved, and the strange power gently and slowly wrapped the cluster of goblet fairy fire. Soon, under Lin En's deconstruction, the cluster of goblet fairy fire gradually turned into a group of ordinary original magic. You know, the goblet fairy fire is a kind of magic flame that never goes out, and it is also called the eternal fire. Even the 10,000 curses can't extinguish it. Even Lin En can only rely on his own flame affinity talent to extinguish the goblet fairy fire he summoned. This is just to extinguish the goblet fairy fire. This is also similar to using a wonderful power similar to my power of thinking, ignoring the process of extinguishing the goblet fairy fire, and directly getting the result of the goblet fairy fire extinguishing. But now, Lin En just lightly pointed and turned the goblet fairy fire, which is called the eternal fire, into a ball of initial magic power. Yes, Lin En did not use his own flame affinity talent to extinguish it, but deconstructed it into primitive magic power, and transformed the goblet fairy fire into another form of magic power. This has never been heard of in the entire magic world. Why is the concept that has never appeared in the entire magic world in the collection of the Roll family in the book? Lin En muttered to himself. He stared at the ball of primitive magic power in the palm of his hand. Under Lin En's control, this ball of original magic changed again. Its magic factors were quickly rearranged and reconstructed under Lin En's control. From the magic book, Lin En had already memorized the magic structure of the magic flame. This ball of original magic was rapidly reshaped according to the structure of the magic flame, and finally turned into a ball of flame burning quietly in Lin En's palm. In fact, the magic structure recorded in this magic book is not only magic flame, but also includes common magic forms such as magic airflow, magic ice, and magic light source. These magic forms come from common magic such as whirlwind sweeping spell, freezing spell and fluorescent spell, and their difficulty is not higher than that of magic flame. But perhaps because of Lin En's affinity for fire, after Lin En learned the magic structure of magic flame, The magic structure of magic flame seemed to be imprinted in the depths of Lin En's mind in an instant. This made Lin En's memory of the magic structure of magic flame reach the deepest, so deep that, unless Lin En used the forget spell on himself, he could clearly recall the magic structure of magic flame at any time. But the magic structures of the other magic forms seemed like heavenly books in Lin En's eyes. No matter how many times Lin En read them, he could not remember them. Perhaps Lin En could follow the contents of the magic book and recreate the magic factors one by one to transform them into other magic forms. But as long as Lin En looked away, he would immediately forget the contents of the magic structure of these magic forms in the magic book, as if someone had cast a forgetfulness spell on him. Lin En was puzzled by this phenomenon. In the end, Lin En could only attribute it to the fact that this was similar to the way of selecting a master in ancient magic. Only wizards with corresponding talents could remember the contents of its magic structure, and other wizards could not remember even a little bit of it, even if they read it dozens or hundreds of times. If this was the case, then it made sense that the ideas in this magic book were only sealed on the bookshelf and never appeared in the world. The magic structure of flame magic, Lin En thought, and he released the fiery fire, Goblet fairy fire, forbidden magic fire and Ziwei heavenly fire one by one. After seeing the fiery fire, Goblet fairy fire, and forbidden magic fire in his hand, Lin En immediately sensed their magic structure. But after Lin En waved his wand and used the freezing spell and the fluorescent spell to create magic ice and magic light respectively, he found that he could not sense the magic structure of these two forms of magic at all. Sure enough, he only had the ability to sense the magic structure of the magic form that matched his own flame affinity talent. Lin En thought so. After summoning the fiery fire, Goblet fairy fire, and forbidden magic fire, and remembering their magic structure, Lin En could use the same method to construct magic flames, to construct the original magic into these three flames. Among them, the forbidden magic fire was different from the other two flames. Lin En could perceive that its essence was the same as ordinary magic flames, but its wonder was that it could be inextricably linked with invisible alchemy arrays. Fortunately, Lin En now has the ability to refine an alchemy array in a moment, which allows him to construct magic flames and alchemy arrays at the same time, and connect them together in the same way as the forbidden magic fire, to refine the forbidden magic fire. This means that when Lin En needs the forbidden magic fire in the future, he does not need to repeat the alchemy process again and again, but can create a new forbidden magic fire out of thin air like summoning other flames. This may be the most direct gain that Lin En has obtained from this magic book. In addition, Lin En cannot sense the magic structure of Ziwei Xianhuo, which makes him feel a little annoyed. The essence of Ziwei Xianhuo is the power of stars, not magic, which makes Lin En unable to use the same method to construct the original magic into Ziwei Xianhuo. In fact, the power of stars can also be understood as the magic power of another system, and Ziwei Xianhuo can also be understood as the magic form of the magic power of another system. Following the same method, with the help of his flame affinity talent, Lin En also had the possibility of directly constructing the star power into the purple myrtle sky fire. However, that was not something Lin En could do in a short time. After all, although the knowledge contained in the elemental magic books of the flame element on this bookshelf was profound, it was all based on magic power. The star power, which was a force that relied on the starry sky and did not exist on Earth, was not within the scope of consideration for the flame elemental magic. Even the purple myrtle sky fire transformed by the star power, whether it could be labeled as magic was still a question mark. Chapter 512, Ice Element Magic Reaction Theory. However, for now, the only way for Lin En to use the power of stars is to transform it into Ziwei Heavenly Fire. This makes him not eager to master the means of constructing the power of stars. After mastering the methods of constructing, deconstructing, and reconstructing these kinds of magic flames, Lin En's understanding of flame magic has reached an extremely high level. It's a pity that it still stops at the quasi-Demon King level. How strong should the understanding of flame magic of the Demon King level be? Lin En felt the flames in his palm and whispered softly. Even the essence of flames and the structure of magic power, which are mysterious things, have been fully mastered by him, but even so, his understanding of flame magic has not yet reached the level of a true Demon King level. This makes Lin En feel regretful, but also more and more looking forward to how powerful he will be after his attainments in flame magic truly reach the Demon King level. After all, when his attainments in flame magic were still at the quasi-Demon King level, he was able to severely injure Voldemort, who was also a Demon King level wizard, and master the magic structure of magic flames. Then, when his attainment in fire magic reaches the Demon King level, won't he be able to punch the Ministry of Magic and kick Voldemort? Exclamation mark. Lin En once again cast his eyes on the second layer of the bookshelf, the other 6 magic books that recorded the magic of the fire element. Just this one book, the essence of flame and its magic structure in his hand, has improved his understanding of fire magic so much, and has made him master the magic structure of magic flames. His attainment in fire magic is only one step away from the Demon King level. Then when Lin En finishes reading these other 6 magic books, won't his attainment in fire magic be able to reach the Demon King level directly? Exclamation mark. When Lin En excitedly took out the second magic book titled On the Special Application and Properties of Fire Magic, Irina was also greatly inspired by the magic book in her hand. The top layer of this bookshelf is filled with elemental magic books of water and ice element. The number of these books is the same as the fire elemental magic books on the second layer, which is also 7. Among these 7 books, 4 are about ice elemental magic, and the other 3 are about water elemental magic. Although only 4 of these magic books are useful to Irina, the value of these 4 books is no less than that of Lin En's 7 books on fire element magic. Just the book The Nature of Ice Element and its Magic Reaction Theory in Irina's hand has made Irina's understanding of ice element magic reach the level of a quasi-demon king. Using the characteristics of ice, combined with special secret methods, mirror reflection, refracting and absorbing other forms of magic, Irina pondered the content on the page. According to the theory of magic reaction of ice element and the nature of ice element and its magic reaction theory, the role that ice can play in battle is far greater than simply freezing the enemy and then killing the enemy. Using special secret methods to make ice achieve the ultimate mirror effect, it can make ice mirror reflection, refracting and absorbing other forms of magic, including magic flame, which is a magic form that restrains magic ice. This combat technique makes Irina simply love it. You know, although Irina often uses the characteristics of ice that can rebound or refract those beam-like spells to defeat the enemy in daily battles, it is impossible for the ice released by Irina to reflect, refract, and absorb the power of magic flames. After all, ice will melt when it encounters flames. However, after Irina used the secret method learned from the nature of ice element and its magic reaction theory, she was able to make the ice she released have special properties. As long as Irina's magic power is high enough, her ice can absorb even magic flames. And this is only a small part of what this magic book brings to Irina. Using the special reaction of ice and space, combined with a special secret method, you can refine blocking ice to block the long distance transmission of wizards, and can be used to create safe houses. Irina whispered the words on the magic book. This so-called blocking ice is not difficult for Irina to understand. Having made countless containers for the Traceless extension spell and countless door keys, she also has certain attainments in the field of space magic. Blocking ice means being able to block all space travels with blocking ice on the space path. For example, if Irina covered the walls of the castle of Roll Castle with blocking ice, then all the apparitions, door keys and flu networks leading to the interior of Roll Castle would be ineffective. As for whether the special space transmission methods of magical animals, such as the apparition of house elves and the flame apparition of phoenixes, are effective, Irina has no way of knowing before the real test. It must be said that this kind of blocking ice is also a very practical method. Irina carefully read every application technique of ice magic recorded in this magic book, and these application techniques can improve her understanding of ice magic to a certain extent. Although most of the magic reaction processes of these ice magics need to be applied to the unique secrets recorded in this magic book, this is not a problem for Irina. These seemingly obscure secrets were so simple and easy to understand in the eyes of Irina, who had an affinity with ice element. Soon, Irina turned to the last page of the magic book, which was also the last type of magic reaction of ice magic recorded in it. After seeing the content of this page, Irina widened her eyes in shock. She subconsciously read out the content of the magic book, using the property of ice with a low enough temperature to freeze everything, supplemented by special secrets. The ice can make time viscous, and even freeze time. Time magic has always been the most mysterious field. The only research on time magic in the magic world today is just staying on the useless time converter. Even the time converter cannot be called time magic, but should be called time alchemy, just like the sand of time, time stillness array and time cycle array refined by Lin En. However, time is not so easy to interfere. Even though this book, The Nature of Ice Element and Its Magical Reaction, records the method of using ice to interfere with time, Irina's current power is not enough to lower the temperature of ice to a level sufficient to affect time. Irina can even foresee that, even if she advances to the level of Demon King, she will not be able to touch this realm at all. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513, Bringing Regulus Home. After understanding the content of the elemental magic book titled The Essence of Ice Element and Its Magical Reaction Theory, Irina pulled out the second elemental magic book on ice elemental magic from the bookshelf. The name of this second magic book is The Essence of Ice and Its Magical Structure, which is quite similar to the first fire magic book that Lin En read. After explaining the essence of ice, it shows Irina the concept of magic structure and the magic structure of ice. At this time, someone will ask, what is the difference between the essence of ice and the essence of ice element recorded in the first magic book? Exclamation mark. In fact, ice is not the same as ice element, and there is a genus-species relationship between the two. Ice is an ice element, but ice element is not just ice. And the magic structure of ice recorded in this magic book is only the magic structure of magic ice. Just like Lin En can only master the magic structure of magic flame, fierce fire, goblet fairy fire, and forbidden magic fire, but cannot deconstruct Ziwei Shian Ho. Although Irina's purple star is made of ice power and star power, it contains star power, which is something that magic structure cannot understand. After all, although the alchemy array is not a magic system, it is at least a power built on magic power, and the energy source of the alchemy array is still magic power. But the star power does not belong to this planet, and it has nothing to do with magic power. The only thing that makes Irina feel fortunate is that she can rely on the magic structure of magic ice to deduce the magic structure of ice power transformed by magic power. In addition to the purple star that Irina has mastered for a few days, the power that Irina can exert in battle is these ice powers. This ability to construct magic forms is enough to greatly improve Irina's combat level. Of course, her understanding of ice magic is also the same. Just like Lin En, who understood the content of the first magic book, Irina could sense that she was only one step away from being promoted to the Demon King level wizard with her mastery of ice magic. After Lin En and Irina had a relatively superficial grasp of the magic structure of the magic form related to their own talents, it was time for lunch. Take the remaining few magic books with you. After lunch, we should return to the Black Ancestral home. Sirius and the others must have been waiting for a long time. After Irina's urging downstairs, Lin En finally woke up from the vast knowledge of fire magic in his hands. He looked at Irina and said so. Irina agreed. She put the ice essence and its magic structure she had finished reading back on the bookshelf, and took out the last two magic books about ice element magic from the bookshelf. The names of the two magic books were The Secret of Cutting Edge Ice Magic, and How to Create Your Own Ice Magic. The names of these two magic books attracted Irina, but due to the things in front of her, she reluctantly stuffed them into her pocket with the Traceless extension spell, and then stood up. On the other side, Lin also packed 6 magic books that recorded fire magic. I was just planning to go back after destroying the Horcrux, but I didn't expect to read books here for a whole morning. I'm embarrassed. Irina touched her nose and said awkwardly. Thinking that there were still a large group of people waiting for them at the Black Ancestral house, Lin and Irina hurried downstairs to have lunch, and then took the Anywhere portal key back to number 12 Grimald's place. When the two of them returned to that room with the anywhere portal key, Lin and Irina found that in addition to Sirius and Harry, there was also an old man waiting for them in the room. "Professor Dumbledore, why are you here?" Lin asked, scratching his head. Sirius said to them seriously, "After we knew the approximate location of the Horcrux, we asked Harris Hedwig to write a letter to Dumbledore. After Dumbledore learned about what happened here, he came here, so that he could be the first to know the whereabouts of the Horcrux." Hearing Sirius' words, Lin and Irina looked at each other, and couldn't help feeling a little ashamed. Looking at the two people's slightly red faces, Dumbledore seemed to have guessed something. He asked with a smile, "Lin, Irina, I guess you have already dealt with the Horcruxes?" Lin nodded quickly. He took out the remains of Slytherin's locket from his pocket and placed it on the table between the people. He said, "We have destroyed Slytherin's locket. This is the remains of the Horcrux." Dumbledore raised his hand and gently stroked the remains that no longer had any dark magic. He sighed, "This is a relic of Slytherin. It should have been one of the greatest treasures of Hogwarts, but it suffered such a fate because of Tom's selfish desires." Everyone looked gloomy. Yes, as one of the four giants of Hogwarts, the relic of Slytherin was made into a Horcrux by a dark demon like Voldemort. How sad is this? Exclamation mark. At this time, Dumbledore turned his gaze to Sirius and said, "Sirius, since Regulus is innocent, I think we should go to that cave and take a look. At least, we should give him a clear name." Hearing Dumbledore's words, Sirius suddenly became excited. He said loudly, "That's right, my brother. He shouldn't stay in that dark cave because of the mistakes I made. I want to bring Regulus back." Hearing this, Dumbledore just smiled slightly. Then, he turned his gaze to Creature, who was silent on the side, and asked, "Creature, could you please take us to that cave and bring Regulus back?" Hearing Dumbledore's words, Creature slowly raised his head, his body stiffened, and then he slowly bent down. Creature said softly, "At your service, Mr. Dumbledore." Lin said calmly, "Then let's take Regulus home." Creature glanced at Lin and said, "Please hold Creature's shoulders." Lin and Irina put their hands on Creature's shoulders, and Dumbledore took Creature's left hand. Seeing this, Sirius hesitated for a moment. He remembered what Regulus had done. He finally let go of his grudge and took the initiative to hold Creature's right hand. Creature looked at Sirius in surprise, as if he was surprised that Sirius, who always hated him and beat and scolded him, would be willing to touch his dirty hand. But soon, the idea of taking Regulus home filled Creature's brain. He stopped thinking about these things, but snapped his fingers lightly and disappeared with everyone. Chapter 514, Voldemort's Cave. When the crowd and Creature reappeared, they found themselves in a dark passage in a crack, surrounded by black rock walls. In front of them was a staircase leading to a large cave. Sirius took 2 steps at a time and came to the cave. He looked at the wall that had no way out and asked doubtfully, "Creature, are you sure this is the place? There is nothing here." Lin waved the wand in his hand gently, receiving the feedback from the released magic power. "This is the cave, but this is just the entrance to the cave. This cave wall is the mechanism set by Voldemort," Lin said in a deep voice. Dumbledore also came over. He sensed the magic fluctuations around him, especially the breath of black magic. Then, he raised the wand in his hand and pointed it at the rock in front. The next moment, an arch-shaped outline appeared on the rock wall where Dumbledore's wand pointed. The arch emitted a dazzling white light, as if there was a strong light shining out from behind the crack. Dumbledore continued to wave his wand, exploring the magical mechanism from Voldemort. At first, Dumbledore's expression was very serious, but not long after, his expression became disappointed. He whispered, "Oh, this is too low level." Sirius asked doubtfully, "What did you say?" Dumbledore explained, "I think we need to pay a price to pass through. That is, we need to give this door enough blood. This is a necessary condition for passing through this door." Even though he had heard about the way to pass this mechanism from Creature, Sirius was still a little surprised. "Blood? Does it have to be the blood of a wizard?" "So I said it's too low level," Dumbledore said lightly. His tone revealed contempt and even disappointment, as if Voldemort had not met Dumbledore's expectations. "You should also be able to understand that this magic mechanism allows the opponent to weaken himself before entering. Sirius frowned and said, then, maybe we can avoid it. At this time, Irina shook her head and said, no, I think it's unavoidable. When Voldemort arranged the various mechanisms in this cave, he was still a Demon King level wizard, and a Demon King level wizard at his peak. This means that any magic mechanism arranged by Voldemort is an unsolvable existence for any wizard below the Demon King level. When Voldemort arranged his own Horcrux, which was the hiding place of his life-saving measures, he must have targeted his biggest threat, that is, Dumbledore. In other words, when Voldemort set up this magic mechanism, he must have made it so that even Dumbledore could not forcibly break it. Of course, Dumbledore used all his strength. If he wanted to break through with brute force, this was just a mechanism that stored part of Voldemort's power, and it was naturally impossible to stop Dumbledore. But the power left by the mechanism would instantly trigger the magic arranged by Voldemort, causing the Horcruxes in the island in the middle of the lake to be teleported away, and the cave to be self-destructed. Even if Dumbledore had no way of knowing, he could roughly guess Voldemort's plan, which was why he did not choose to break through by force. After getting an explanation from Irina, Sirius suddenly realized it. He took out a dagger from his pocket and said, since you must donate blood, use mine. As he said that, Sirius was about to stab his arm with the dagger. Seeing this, Lin raised his hand to stop him. Don't stop me, Lin. Sirius looked at Lin and said, I have a certain responsibility for Agida's death. If being buried here is his atonement for joining the Death Eaters, then personally experiencing the suffering he had experienced, and then taking him home is my atonement. Hearing this, Lin patted his shoulder and said, don't worry, Sirius, you still have time to atone for your sins. There is no need for you to waste your energy here on this magic mechanism that cannot be cracked by force, but has extremely simple contents. There are countless black magics and curses hidden behind this magic mechanism, which means it cannot be cracked by force, but violent cracking is not possible. We can use our brains. Since this magic mechanism requires blood, we will give it. Anyway, it doesn't require our own blood. Looking at Sirius with a puzzled look, Lin explained with a smile. While talking, Lin cast his eyes on Irina. Irina took out a blood bag wrapped in ice from her pocket, which contained about 1000 cc of blood. Remember the dark wizard we gave you last time? Irina looked at Dumbledore and said with a smile, we took a sample of his blood in advance, just in case. Dumbledore looked at her helplessly and said, just in case. I don't think there are many magical devices that require blood that you can encounter, right? Irina spread her hands and said innocently, what if? Then we can't use our own blood, right? Anyway, it's frozen in ice, so it won't go bad. At this time, Lin En had already taken the ice that sealed the blood bag from Irina. A layer of flames wrapped around the ice, gradually melting it, revealing the blood bag inside. Lin En gently tore open the blood bag and splashed it on the rock in front of him. The next moment, the dazzling white archway outline appeared on the cave wall again, and the rock in the archway, covered with blood, disappeared, revealing a doorway. The road is open, let's go in, Lin said with a smile. Sirius stared at the archway that was supposed to be drenched with his blood, but it was easily opened by Lin. After a long while, Sirius came to his senses and followed Lin's steps. When everyone walked into the archway, they saw a very strange scene. Everyone was standing on the shore of a large black lake. The lake was extremely wide and boundless, and the other side of the lake could not be seen in the distance. The cave on the other side of the archway was very high, and even if everyone looked up, they could not see the top of the cave. In the distance, as if in the center of the lake, there seemed to be a hazy green light flickering, reflected in the dead lake water below. Except for the green light and the light emitted by the fire in Lin's palm, everyone was surrounded by thick darkness, and they could not see their hands in front of them. Even the light emitted by the flame in Lin's palm was not as bright as he expected. The darkness here seemed to be denser and heavier than ordinary darkness. Let's go forward, Dumbledore said softly. Be careful not to step into the water. The group walked forward around the lake shore, and their feet stepped on the narrow rocks by the lake, making short echoes. However, even though they kept moving forward, the scenery around them did not change at all. On one side of them was the rough wall of the cave, and on the other side was the boundless, smooth black lake, with the mysterious green light still flickering in the center of the lake. Chapter 515. Everything Master Regulus has experienced. Lin En walked in the front. After learning the structure of magic, he had an extremely keen insight into magic, which enabled him to detect the breath of other magic faster than others. Dumbledore and Irina walked behind Lin En. Although Irina also mastered the method of magic structure, she had not yet reached the level of Demon King. She could surpass all wizards of the same level in the field of magic perception, but she was far inferior to Dumbledore, who was a Demon King level wizard. Sirius fell behind the three people, even though he had the strongest desire to bring Regulus Black home among the four. But he also knew that with his level of magic, he would only be a burden to them, which made Sirius choose to walk behind to avoid being hit by unknown mechanisms. The house elf creature fell at the end, looking at Lin En and others who were walking in the front with hope. Found it. Lin En seemed to have noticed something. He smiled and said, his left hand suddenly grasped the air forward, and then pulled it back. A green copper chain as thick as Lin's forearm emerged from the depths of the lake, leaped towards Lin's fist, slid through Lin's fist, and coiled on the ground. The sound of the chain hitting the rock wall echoed in the cave, and the green copper chain seemed to pull something up from the bottom of the dark lake. Sirius came over. From creature's description, he knew that this was a small boat, but after seeing the boat with his own eyes, he was still shocked. The hull of the boat was like the green copper chain, emitting a green light. It slowly floated towards the crowd without causing a ripple. It was as if this boat did not exist in this world at all, and was not for living people to ride. When the boat docked, Dumbledore came over, and placed his palm on the boat. Dumbledore closed his eyes, and felt it for a while, then said, "This boat is enchanted. There is an upper limit to the magic strength of the wizards riding it. I think it can only carry one wizard at a time." Lin said, "Then, we will go there in 4 trips. Creature's magic strength is negligible. We can let creature act as a boatman, to ferry back and forth, and take all of us there." Lin's proposal was agreed by everyone, including creature. In this way, creature took the 4 people to the island in the middle of the lake one by one. The lake seems to be full of corpses. Sirius looked at Lin, Irina and Dumbledore, and said with some palpitations. Sirius was the last one to arrive at the island in the middle of the lake, and on the way to the small boat, he saw the lake full of dry white human hands. Dumbledore nodded with a heavy expression and said, "This is not an ordinary corpse, but a corpse made by Voldemort. This is also part of the mechanism Voldemort set up here. If I'm not mistaken, once someone breaks the rules here, these corpses will crawl ashore and kill that person." Lin En said lightly, "There are at least 1,000 corpses in the lake, and there has not been a tragedy of 1,000 wizards missing or dying in the British wizarding world for 100 years. Even the number of wizards killed by Voldemort so far is only a few hundred. It can be guessed that these corpses are not from the wizarding world, but from muggles. Yes, Voldemort killed thousands of muggles. He massacred a village of muggles, just to make them into corpses to guard his Horcruxes." As Lin En said this, there was already some anger in his eyes. Voldemort really deserves to die for such a disregard for human life and such anti-human behavior. Sirius's face was solemn, and his anger was hard to suppress. "This is where the Slytherin locket was hidden. Perhaps here we can find the relics left by Regulus," Irina said softly, interrupting everyone's thoughts. After hearing Irina's words, several people looked at the island. The island was about the same size as Dumbledore's headmaster's office. There was a large flat black stone slab on the island. It was empty, with only the light source emitting the green light. After everyone landed on the island, the green light seemed much brighter. Sirius walked a few steps closer and squinted at it. He thought it was a lamp, but when he got closer to the green light, he found that the green light came from a stone basin similar to a pensieve, with a base under the stone basin. Sirius could see that the stone basin was filled with a basin of emerald green liquid, and it was this liquid that emitted a glittering phosphorescent light. Sirius asked, "Creature, is this the poison you mentioned?" Creature nodded silently without saying anything. Sirius understood. He sighed and reached out to the stone basin, trying to touch the liquid. However, there seemed to be an invisible resistance blocking his hand, preventing him from approaching the liquid. No matter how hard he stretched his hand down, his fingers seemed to touch the hard and indestructible air. At this time, Dumbledore came over, raised his wand, made some complicated movements on the surface of the liquid, and muttered something silently. As Dumbledore moved, there was no movement on the surface of the liquid, but the green light it emitted seemed to be brighter. Sirius stared at the emerald green liquid and murmured, "The fake Slytherin locket, the last relic left by Regulus, is underneath the poison." Dumbledore said in a deep voice, "This liquid cannot be reached with your hands. You cannot separate it, scoop it out, or drain it out. You cannot use a vanishing charm to make it disappear, use magic to deform it, or change its properties in other ways. It seems that drinking it is the only way." Dumbledore raised the wand in his hand again, spun it in the air, and conjured up a tall crystal wine glass, and held it in his hand. Dumbledore continued, "It can be seen that Voldemort will not be willing to kill the people who come to this island immediately. He will let them live for a while, to find out how they can pass through his defenses, and most importantly, why they are so eager to empty the stone basin. There is no doubt that this potion will definitely prevent people who come here from obtaining Horcruxes. It will probably paralyze the person who comes here, make that person forget the purpose of coming here, make that person feel extremely painful, unable to concentrate, or otherwise incapacitate that person." Dumbledore said so. At the side, Creature covered his face and sobbed silently. Isn't what Dumbledore said exactly what Master Regulus had experienced? Chapter 516. Exquisite grey is the main color in this world. Sirius looked at the emerald green potion with a complicated expression, and his emotions were mixed. After a long while, he finally made up his mind, and took the crystal goblet from Dumbledore. He said firmly, "If we can only get Regulus's relics, after drinking the potion here, then let me drink them. Regulus will suffer all this, and I'm absolutely responsible. It is my distrust and hatred that prevented him from seeking help from me, his brother, in times of crisis. This is my sin. I will not escape. I must walk his path again." Sirius said he finally understood what Lin meant when he said outside the cave that he should atone for his sins later. Lin, Irina and Dumbledore did not mean to stop Sirius. They knew that if Sirius did not do this, the other party might not even be able to get over the hurdle in their hearts. Sirius has always been a person with a strong sense of justice, but as the only Gryffindor in the Black family, he also has many bad habits. He was like a child, clearly distinguishing between good and bad, and distinguishing everyone he met as good or bad. But he didn't understand that the world was never black and white, and delicate grey was the main color of the world. He thought that the Death Eaters were bad people, which made him subconsciously think that his brother who joined the Death Eaters was also a complete bad person. He didn't trust his brother, hated his brother, and finally pushed his brother into the bottomless abyss. He was a good man, but he inevitably committed his sins. However, when he understood all this, it was too late. He lost his brother, and paid the price for his ignorance. Lin. Sirius turned around, 2 tears flowing from his eyes. "Can I ask you a favor?" Lin nodded slightly. Sirius said in a pleading tone, "Lin, if I can't stand the pain the potion brings me, then please make sure I keep drinking it, even if you have to pour the potion into my tightly closed mouth. Do your best to make me continue to drink it until the potion in the stone basin is dry, okay?" Lin said calmly, "Yes. Thank you." Sirius said with relief. He resolutely scooped a full cup of emerald green liquid from the stone basin, poured it into his mouth, and drank it all. The next moment, Sirius closed his eyes tightly, and his hand holding the crystal goblet loosened, and the crystal goblet slid to the ground. Sirius held the edge of the stone basin tightly with both hands, shaking all over, and his fingertips were numb. Just from Sirius's physical reaction, the 3 people could guess how painful Sirius was at this time. Sirius closed his eyes. He grabbed the crystal goblet on the ground, scooped another full cup, and poured it into his mouth. He felt endless pain all over his body. This pain even surpassed the pain of using the Cruciatus curse on himself dozens of times. Sirius stumbled and fell on the stone basin, his eyes still closed, breathing heavily. This potion brought Sirius not only physical pain, but also mental torture. Therefore, even if this highly toxic potion is called the Cruciatus Curse Pro Maximum version, it is not an exaggeration. Sirius leaned on the stone basin. His body was twitching, as if he was having a terrible nightmare, and his hand holding the crystal cup gradually loosened. Seeing that Sirius had lost the ability to move, Lin walked over calmly and took the crystal cup. Lin straightened Sirius's body, then opened Sirius's mouth without hesitation and poured the third cup of potion in the cup into Sirius' mouth. Ah, it hurts. I don't want to do this. Don't force me. Sirius looked even more painful. He kept groaning, and his face showed an unprecedented fear. But Lin was not moved at all. He scooped another cup of potion from the stone basin and poured it into Sirius' mouth in the same way. In order to end Sirius's pain faster, Lin's movements did not slow down, but sped up a little. Before Sirius could react, he scooped 5 cups of potion in a row and poured it into Sirius' mouth. After 9 cups of potion, Sirius had completely lost his mind. Please, don't do that. Don't do that. I'll do anything. Sirius cried and wailed like a child who was abused. Lin's face was still calm. He used one hand to forcefully pry open Sirius' mouth, making him unable to speak. With the other hand, he scooped up the 10th cup of potion and poured it into Sirius' open mouth without mercy. At this time, Lin could feel that his crystal cup had touched the bottom of the stone basin. With 2 more cups, he could scoop out all the emerald green liquid in the stone basin. But just as Lin scooped up the 11th cup of potion, Sirius suddenly struggled. He resisted the potion that brought him despair more than ever before. I want to die. I want to die. Make it stop. Make it stop. I want to die. I want to die. Let me die. Sirius wailed in pain, rolling on the floor. Quickly imprison. Lin ignored Sirius's wailing, but just tapped Sirius with his wand and used magic to summon a rope to tie Sirius up so that he could not move. Then, Lin poured the last 2 cups of potion into Sirius' mouth. Creature witnessed all this, and when he saw Sirius drink all the potion in the stone basin, just like Master Regulus did back then, he couldn't help but be slightly moved. Master Sirius is really too stupid. Creature whispered. No one could hear what he said. He gently wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes. At this time, the stone basin was empty. Only a metal locket was left in the middle of the empty stone basin. Lin took it out and handed it to Sirius, who had been untied. Sirius, this is Regulus's relic, Lin said. However, Sirius, who was still under the influence of the potion, had no time to care about the locket. His eyes seemed to have lost their light, and he said hoarsely, water. I want water. Give me water. Please reward and monthly ticket. Chapter 517 Master Regulus was assimilated into a corpse. Clear water like a spring. Dumbledore tapped the crystal cup, and clear liquid appeared in it. However, when Dumbledore handed the crystal cup to Sirius's mouth, the liquid in the crystal cup disappeared in an instant. Seeing this, Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. He did not try to conjure water again. Since the water in the crystal cup would disappear, it must be a certain magic in the cave that prohibited the appearance of liquids other than those highly toxic potions. I'm afraid even the water in the lake is a potion with the same ingredients as the emerald green liquid in the stone basin. Irina came over, and when she raised her hand, a piece of ice appeared in her hand. Scientifically speaking, ice is another form of water, and can also be classified as water. But unfortunately, the magic world does not talk about science. Magic is idealistic. Wizards who lack scientific knowledge have never classified ice as water. Even Voldemort was like this. He despised muggles and regarded them as ants. How could he learn muggle science? Exclamation mark. That's how Irina successfully exploited the loophole of magic and summoned another form of water, that is, ice. Eat it, Sirius, before it melts. Eat it, Irina said, and she handed the ice cube in her hand to Sirius' mouth. Sirius obediently ate the ice cube, and the cool feeling spread through his esophagus and spread throughout his body. He finally eased up. Sirius stood up weakly. He looked at the locket in his hand, and then cast his eyes on Creature. I found it, something left by Regulus. Sirius said softly. As you wish. Creature bowed slightly. Master Sirius. Creature saluted Sirius. This was the first time he saluted Sirius from the bottom of his heart. Lin looked at Dumbledore and Sirius and said, now that the locket has been found, we should also look for Regulus' body. To be honest, it is not easy to find a body among more than 1,003. Irina cast her eyes on Creature and asked softly, Creature, if Regulus appeared in front of us, could you recognize him? Hearing this, Creature immediately said excitedly, "Of course, Miss Lovell. Of course Creature can recognize Master Regulus." Hearing Creature's words, Irina smiled at Lin and said, "In that case, let's get all the inferi out, and let Creature identify them. As for the inferi other than Regulus, just burn them, which can also be regarded as a relief for those innocent villagers who were killed." Lin nodded slightly, and he threw the crystal goblet into the lake not far away. The crystal goblet fell into the water, splashing a burst of water. But following the splash, there was an even more violent riot. The entire lake seemed to be boiling, with countless white heads and sticky dry hands poking out of the water. These corpses were men, women, and children, and countless of them floated towards the island with sunken visionless eyes. Looking at the hundreds of corpses coming towards him, Lin En's face was fearless. As Lin En gently waved his left hand, purple flames ignited in an instant and spread in all directions at a very fast speed. That was his Zhui Xian Huo, and it was also the hottest of all his flames. "Creature, you must tell me within 5 seconds of Regulus' body leaving the lake. I will clean up the corpses that have been away from the lake for more than 5 seconds. Lin En said, and as he waved his hands, purple flames roared forward. In an instant, dozens of corpses were entangled by the Zhui Xian Huo and turned into ashes and dissipated in the air. With the highest temperature of the purple starfire, even steel can evaporate in an instant, let alone these mortal Yin corpses? Exclamation mark. If it weren't for the fact that the stars were not shining at this moment, the purple starfire had not yet reached its complete purple gold form, and Lin En had deliberately controlled the temperature of the purple starfire. Otherwise the entire lake and the Yin corpses in it would probably be evaporated. Fist-sized purple flames continued to fly out from Lin En's palm, attacking those Yin corpses whose entire bodies had been out of the lake for more than 5 seconds. These purple flames were obviously only the size of a fist, but once those Yin corpses came into contact with these purple flames, the purple flames would sweep over their entire bodies in an instant and burn them completely. Under the high efficiency attack of these purple starfires, even though these Yin corpses continued to crawl out of the lake and attack the few people on the island, not even a single Yin corpse could break through the defense line of the purple starfire and approach within 10 meters of everyone. As for why it was 10 meters, it was because Lin En and the others were only 11 meters away from the lake shore. At this time, someone would ask, aren't the infernals afraid of light and fire? If Lin En casts the purple myrtle sky fire like this, won't the infernals escape? Exclamation mark. In fact, the range that the infernals can sense is limited, and the purple myrtle sky fire released by Lin En is mainly shrouded above the island. The purple flames that attack the infernals are just a small wisp of fire differentiated from the purple myrtle sky fire. The infernals often haven't noticed the existence of the purple myrtle sky fire, and they have been burned to ashes by the attacking purple flames. After all, Lin En only has a short time of 5 seconds for these infernals. Unknowingly, more than 500 infernals have crawled out of the lake and disappeared under the burning of the purple myrtle sky fire, but Regulus' body is still missing. This makes Creature a little anxious. "Master Regulus, where are you?" Creature paced back and forth, looking anxiously at the inferi that kept floating up from the lake. He had personally seen Regulus being dragged down to the lake by the inferi. Under the influence of the potions in the lake, it was a foregone conclusion that Regulus had been assimilated into an inferi. Even though Regulus's appearance would certainly change slightly after being assimilated into an inferi and his body was soaked by the lake water, Creature believed that, as long as Master Regulus appeared in front of him, he would be able to recognize him. After an unknown amount of time, Creature's body, which was pacing back and forth, suddenly stopped in place, and his big eyes were filled with tears. Not far ahead, a young-looking figure wearing a wizard robe with a black family logo slowly emerged from the lake. Chapter 518. I don't think there's anyone more qualified than you to hold it. That's Master Regulus. That's Master Regulus. Master Owl, please. Creature jumped up excitedly after seeing the figure whose skin had been wrinkled and whitened by the lake water. Creature could hardly control his emotions. He grabbed Lin's robe and spoke in a pleading tone. Lin gently waved his wand, and the silent zombie floating spell was released, dragging Regulus Black, who was lifted up and struggling in the air and turned into an inferi in front of everyone. Sirius Black cast a confinement spell with a complicated expression, restrained Regulus, and then handed him over to Creature for support. After finding Regulus Black's body, Lin no longer had to show mercy to the remaining infantry. The purple sky fire surrounding everyone no longer split into wisps of flames to kill the Lin corpses as before, but spread in all directions in an instant. The purple flames burning all over the sky covered the entire cave and swept towards the Lin corpses. Lin En only used a magic to protect himself and the others, and then he stopped controlling the high temperature of the purple sky fire. The intense high temperature evaporated the lake water mixed with the ingredients of the emerald green magic potion in the cave in an instant, and the remaining more than 400 Lin corpses were not even left with ashes. This cave is going to collapse, let's go. Feeling the black magic power around him that was falling apart under the burning of the purple sky fire, as well as the cave itself, Lin En said to everyone. In order to prevent their own power from affecting innocent people, they destroyed Regulus' body and his relics. Neither Lin En nor Dumbledore directly destroyed the rules and environment here. But since they have obtained the locket left by Regulus, and found the body of Regulus who turned into an infantry, then this place full of evil atmosphere naturally has no need to exist. Chirp at this moment, the cry of a phoenix suddenly sounded. In the flash of fire, forks appeared on Dumbledore's raised arm, and it gently called twice to Lin, Irina and Sirius. Lin and Irina understood and put their hands on Dumbledore one by one. Sirius did not come over. While supporting Regulus who was controlled by the binding spell, he grabbed Creature's hand and ordered Creature to take them back to the Black Ancestral home. Creature was anxious to take Regulus home. After receiving Sirius's order, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers without any hesitation. The next moment, Creature, Sirius and Regulus who turned into an infantry disappeared from the spot. Seeing that Sirius had already left, Dumbledore also asked Fawkes to use the flame apparition to take the three away from the completely collapsed cave. After losing Lin's control, the ownerless purple sky fire began to destroy everything around it. From the island in the lake full of various black magic and curses, to the rock wall that needed blood to be poured to be opened. One after another of the mechanisms arranged by Voldemort here were burned by the purple sky fire with an extremely strong attitude. The purple flame surged wildly, evaporating 80% to 90% of the seawater within a mile. Until the star power contained in the purple sky fire was completely consumed, the purple flame slowly turned into nothingness and dissipated into the air. At the same time, in the Black Ancestral home, Dumbledore stepped forward and lifted the confinement spell on Regulus, and he tapped the wand in his hand on Regulus' body. As a white gold light spread from the tip of Dumbledore's wand and swept over Regulus' body, Regulus finally stopped moving and fell to the ground. His empty eyes finally closed. I have lifted Regulus's inferior state. I think we should bury him properly, Dumbledore said softly. Of course, Sirius said in a heavy tone. If you don't mind, I plan to bury him myself. Creature came out silently and said, Respected Master Sirius, please ask Creature for help. Sirius glanced at Creature, Regulus Black's favorite house elf, the guy who told them the truth of the year. Sirius nodded and said nothing. Sirius refused the help of everyone else, including his godson Harry. So, everyone stood in the backyard of the Black Ancestral home and watched Sirius and Creature bury Regulus' body with their own hands without using any magic. On the tombstone, Sirius personally carved these words, Here lies the bravest Regulus Arcturus Black. After returning from the backyard, Sirius called Creature who was about to make dinner. This is for you, Creature. Sirius took out the locket left by Regulus from his pocket. It was a relic left by Regulus. Sirius did not intend to open the locket, but handed it directly to Creature. Creature took the locket subconsciously. He looked at Sirius in confusion and said hesitantly, Master Sirius. Sirius squatted down so that he could look at Creature at eye level. He looked at Creature seriously and said softly, I know that I have done a lot of stupid things and wrongly accused you. You are a very good and dedicated house elf, Creature. As for this locket, including me, Creature, I don't think anyone is more qualified than you to hold it. Sirius said so, and he held Creature's little hand holding the locket, so that Creature's hand could hold the locket firmly. Hearing Sirius' words, Creature was moved to tears. Since Master Regulus died, no one has been so kind to it. Even Sirius, who returned after clearing his name, beat or scolded it. And now, Sirius was willing to apologize to this humble house elf, and even gave it the things left by Master Regulus for keeping, which moved Creature so much that he could hardly contain himself. "Thank you, Master Sirius, thank you." Creature spoke incoherently. Sirius stood up and said in a vicious tone, "Okay, stop nagging and make dinner for us." Hearing this, Creature stopped crying, and he cheered up and said loudly, "Yes, Master Sirius." After Creature finished speaking, he snapped his fingers and disappeared into the living room. Chapter 519. No solution is no solution after being cursed. Lin, if I remember correctly, you should have reached adulthood before August 31st this year, right? Dumbledore looked at Lin and asked with a smile. Lin nodded and replied, "Well, my birthday is in July, Professor." Dumbledore winked at Lin and said, "Then, when the new semester starts, you should be able to sign up for the apparition class. Apparition is a very useful magic, isn't it?" Hearing Dumbledore's words, Lin was surprised. He remembered that Hogwarts Castle would hold an apparition course for young wizards in grades 6 and 7 who met the age requirements every year, and the Ministry of Magic would send professional teachers to cooperate with the 4 deans of Hogwarts Castle to teach. "I will sign up." Lin nodded to Dumbledore. "If it weren't for the age limit, I should have learned it long ago." Dumbledore smiled and let the Phoenix Forks take him away in flames. After Lin and Irina enjoyed a dinner cooked by Creature at the Black Ancestral home, they took the Anywhere Dorky back to Rowell Castle. It must be said that after the Regulus incident was exposed and Sirius and Creature had reconciled, Creature paid much more attention to cooking dinner than before. The taste of the food cooked by Creature was almost comparable to that of Gale more than 10 years ago. As for why it was Gale more than 10 years ago, it was because Gale had studied the cooking techniques of those oriental cuisines for more than 10 years, and the food he cooked had few rivals in the entire British magic world. After all, even a simple white cut chicken tasted much better than the so-called chef's stargazing pie. Lin and Irina packed their luggage at Rowell Castle and took the Anywhere Dorky to Hogsmeade Village the next day, and then returned to Hogwarts Castle along the path of Hogsmeade Village. When they arrived at Hogwarts Castle, the two returned to their respective dormitories and continued to read the elemental magic books they took away from the 5th floor of Rowell Castle. Time soon came to the morning of the new semester. When Lin En was about to walk through the Slytherin common room and go to the hall for breakfast, he found that many young wizards were gathered around the notice board in the common room. On the notice board, there was a big notice. Apparition class if you are 17 years old, or will be 17 before August 31st, you can participate in the 12-week apparition course taught by the Ministry of Magic apparition instructor. Please sign below if you are willing to participate. Tuition, 12 galleons. Lin En suddenly realized that this was the apparition course that Dumbledore had said that night, and he could sign up for it. Lin En is now 16 years old, and in July of this year, he will be 17 years old. Therefore, he meets the requirements for learning apparition. Lin En is about to turn 17, which means that the size of the space framework he constructs when traveling in space has basically been finalized. He no longer had to worry about whether the space frame he constructed while practicing apparition would become inappropriate due to his physical development. Lin walked up without hesitation and signed his name on the notice board. Although he could learn apparition from his own teacher Green, it would be the same, no matter who he learned from, and his own teacher would definitely be more professional than the teacher sent by the Ministry of Magic. But since he was already a Demon King level wizard, the meaning of staying in Hogwarts Castle to go to school was to enjoy this kind of life of learning magic, right? Exclamation mark. Since the teacher sent by the Ministry of Magic could teach apparition, there was no need for him to be unique. After all, the Ministry of Magic also had its own education department, which was the Wizard Examination Administration. The old professors there had very profound knowledge. They were real professors and scholars, not politicians like Umbridge. After signing his name, Lin came to the auditorium. "Hey, Lin, how was Christmas?" Iwin came to sit next to Lin and greeted him. "Very good." Lin nodded, then looked at him with a half smile. "The Christmas present you gave me is pretty good, isn't it?" Hearing Lin mention the Christmas present he gave to him, Iwin scratched his head a little guilty and said, I'm asking you to take a look. Are you interested? It looks pretty good. I'll get the blood curse from the crystal cabinet and give it to you later. Iwin could still tell from Lin's expression that he was not very opposed to learning the blood curse and then teaching it to Astoria, which made Iwin a little happy. Lin chuckled and said, of course, we are all partners, aren't we? Iwin understood that Lin was not just referring to him, and he also smiled and said, that's right. Oh, by the way, thank you for the Guardian token you gave me for Christmas. The Guardian token Iwin mentioned was an alchemical equipment that Lin had made specifically for the 3 unforgivable curses. As we all know, the 3 unforgivable curses do not have any counter curses. The Avada Kedavra and Cruciatus curse are, because the trauma they cause cannot be repaired, and the Imperious curses because of its concealment and sequelae that are almost unsolvable. But the alchemical metal pieces that Lin refined last year when he was targeting Barty Crouch Jr., who was pretending to be Professor Moody, were able to resist the Imperious curse while releasing a golden beam of light to counterattack the attacker. The Guardian token that Lin gave to Irving also has the same effect. It can help Irving resist an attack of the Imperious curse and release a disarming spell in the direction of the attacker. Here, I would like to explain that this disarming spell stored in the Guardian token was stored by Lin himself. This means that this is not an ordinary disarming spell, but a demon level disarming spell. If the wizard who was cursed was hit by this disarming spell, it would be light for him to have his wand taken away. The powerful impact is estimated to be able to squeeze a wizard alive into a pulp. In addition, when this Guardian token detects the magical fluctuations of Avada Kedavra and Cruciatus curse around the wearer, it will instantly release the power of the alchemical array with displacement effect stored by Lin En, allowing Iwin to teleport 10 meters away. The compound alchemical array composed of dozens of alchemical arrays is enough to allow the wearer to avoid the attack of Kedavra and Cruciatus curse, even if the opponent's Kedavra and Cruciatus curse are less than 1 meter away from the wearer. This is not the end. After completing the displacement, the Guardian token will follow the magic trajectory of the attacker and return to the original place to cast a corresponding Avada Kedavra or Cruciatus curse, giving the opponent a small lesson. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520, The Mole in the Department of Magical Transportation. It is true that the 3 unforgivable curses are unsolvable black magic, but the unsolvable refers to the unsolvable after being cursed. As long as he is not cursed, the 3 unforgivable curses will have no deterrent power. This is also the reason why, on the battlefield of the Demon King level wizards, except for Voldemort, who can play the Avada Kedavra curse, the 3 unforgivable curses are rarely seen. Perhaps this Guardian token is not very useful for Lin En, who controls the forbidden magic fire, and Irina, who can use the power of ice to turn into ice blue light and shuttle at high speed. But in Irving's hands, this Guardian token is a life-saving artifact. After all, Irving's current use of the power of thunder is just to turn it into a falling thunder or a palm thunder to bombard the enemy. His offensive ability is very strong, but his defense is slightly inferior. It's just a stitched monster. There's nothing technical about it. Lin En smiled and waved his hand, saying, you've seen how this Guardian token responds to the Imperious curse last year. While Lin En was talking to Irving, Lin En suddenly felt something in his pocket seemed to be heating up. Lin En raised his hand and took the thing out. It was an improved two-way mirror. It not only allowed the holders to talk face to face like an ordinary two-way mirror, but also allowed the holders to use text to transmit information when it was inconvenient. The other holder of this two-way mirror was Old Barty, and this was also the tool that Lin En used to get in touch with Old Barty and get the dynamic intelligence of the Ministry of Magic in a timely manner. At this time, a few lines of words slowly emerged on the two-way mirror. I have let Scrimgeour, the director of the Aura office, know about the Devil's Web assassination incident accidentally. Scrimgeour is secretly investigating the possible internal traitors in the Ministry of Magic. The existing clues point to Fudge's followers. I will follow the trend and provide convenience for them. Every profession has its own expertise. Although Barty Sr. has the alchemical equipment to detect the dark mark in the absence of other clues, it is obviously the most appropriate choice to let Scrimgeour, the director of the Aura office, be in charge of the investigation. Barty Sr.'s judgment was not wrong. After Scrimgeour learned about the Devil's Web assassination incident and secretly launched an investigation, he actually found clues in just a few days. Although the direction of this clue is basically consistent with the direction guessed by Lin and the others, being able to come up with these is enough to show Scrimgeour's ability. Thinking of this, Lin's mouth corners slightly raised, and with a wave of his fingers, a line of text appeared on the two-way mirror. Continue to investigate, and after catching the Death Eater, execute him according to the old rules. After sending this message, Lin put away the two-way mirror and he breathed a sigh of relief. In Hogwarts Castle, Lin and Irina had to mobilize the emotions of the young wizards to deal with Umbridge, their common enemy. Outside Hogwarts Castle, old Barty was responsible for the battle in the officialdom, suppressing Fudge and his followers, uncovering the Death Eater's inner ghost, and completely removing Fudge from office at the end of the school year. Under the premise of this two-front battle, the cooperation between the two sides and the flow of intelligence became particularly important. Breakfast time was over soon. On the other side, when Irina, Harry and others went to the magical creature protection class, they learned a bad news. That is, Hagrid was retained for observation. Obviously, Umbridge had no intention of letting Hagrid go. Hagrid's identity as a giant half-blood was a glaring stain in Umbridge's eyes. Harry and others stood up for Hagrid and insulted Umbridge. Irina was not too worried. She just comforted Hagrid and told Hagrid that this retention and observation would last at most half a year, just like 2 years ago. As long as Umbridge's actions were within the scope of the plan, there was no need for Irina to get angry over a dead person. In this way, the peaceful days lasted for another week. And this weekend, in the Ministry of Magic, finally found you. Scrimgeour checked the information handed over by a confidant in his hand, Michael Landry. The Michael Landry mentioned by Scrimgeour was an employee of the Department of Magical Transportation, responsible for assisting in the management of the Flu Network and sending mail for the Ministry of Magic. It was Michael Landry who used his authority to send the Devil's Snare disguised as a crab cactus to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. Michael Landry was apparently following Fudge's orders and was Fudge's party member. Scrimgeour could not be sure whether the other party was a spy planted by the Death Eaters in the Ministry of Magic. Scrimgeour looked at the confidant in front of him and said, "Corin, come with me to the Department of Magical Transportation. Don't make a sound." "Yes, Director." Corin nodded. He silently grabbed his wand and followed Scrimgeour's steps. After Scrimgeour and Corin left the Aura's office and headed for the Department of Magical Transportation, Barty Sr. suddenly appeared in the hallway outside the Aura's office. He smiled and looked at Scrimgeour and Corin's backs, chuckled and said, "Michael Landry, so that's it. You put the mole in these inconspicuous positions to avoid my investigation?" Michael Landry's position in the Department of Magical Transportation is comparable to an intern in those companies in the Muggle world. His daily work is to assist in monitoring the Flu Network and send letters by owl. It's no wonder that no one would notice him for such an idle job, just checking the surveillance and sending express mail. Unfortunately, Michael Landry used the Ministry of Magic's channels to send the Devil's Net to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries through owls, which eventually exposed his flaws. At this time, Scrimgeour and Corin had taken the Ministry of Magic's elevator to the 6th floor, which was the work location of the Department of Magical Transportation. The two went straight to the Flu Network administration. "Director Scrimgeour, what are you doing here?" After Scrimgeour and Corin arrived at the Flu Network administration, someone immediately came to greet them. Scrimgeour nodded slightly to the visitor and then asked, "Good morning, Mrs. Edgecombe. Is Michael Landry here?" The witch who came to greet them was Mrs. Edgecombe, who was in charge of the Flu Network administration. Like Michael Landry, Mrs. Edgecombe also worked for Fudge on the surface, and this year she followed Fudge's orders to monitor the Flu Network of Hogwarts Castle. In the original book, it was because the Flu Network was monitored that Harry was unable to contact Sirius Black. which indirectly led to the tragedy. Chapter 521, Fierce Fight. Michael wants to escape. Mrs. Edgemore couldn't help but frowned when she heard Scrimgeour's words. Michael is in there, what happened? Mrs. Edgemore hesitated, but because of the other party's identity as the head of the Aura office, she still told the truth. Hearing this, Scrimgeour nodded. He didn't say anything, but pulled out his wand from his waist and walked straight into the Flu Network administration. Corrin pulled out his wand. He blocked Mrs. Edgemore, who was trying to stop him, and said seriously, "Mrs. Edgemore, Michael Landry of the Flu Network administration is suspected of using his power to use the Ministry of Magic's owl to send the Devil's Net to assassinate the unspeakable man of the Department of Mysteries of the Ministry of Magic. We will take Michael Landry away for questioning in accordance with the law. Please don't stop us." Corrin raised his wand and said. After learning that Michael was suspected of assassinating the unspeakable man of the Department of Mysteries, Mrs. Edgemore was immediately at a loss. In Mrs. Edgemore's impression, Michael was an honest man with no sense of existence. How could he be the murderer who assassinated the unspeakable? Exclamation mark. The Flu Network administration is composed of small rooms, and in each small room there is a Ministry of Magic employee responsible for monitoring the movement of one or more Flu networks. Scrimgeour pushed open the door of the room with the name Michael Landry on the doorplate, pointed his wand at the confused man inside, and said in a deep voice, "Michael Landry, after the investigation of the Aura office, it was found that you are related to a magical assassination case. Please cooperate with the investigation." After seeing Scrimgeour, the head of the Aura office, appear in person and the other party mentioned the magical assassination case, Michael immediately realized that what he had done was exposed. If Michael was just an employee of the Ministry of Magic and assassinated the unspeakable for other reasons, then Michael would not have needed to resist. He would just cooperate with the investigation. Anyway, Fudge would come to rescue him as a accomplice. But in addition to being a staff member of the Ministry of Magic and Fudge's henchman, he also has an unspeakable identity, that is, a Death Eater, and the kind with the dark mark on his arm. If the dark mark on him was discovered by Scrimgeour, then being sent to Azkaban would be fine, and there might be a chance to be rescued by Prison Break. However, Michael knew clearly that all other colleagues who had sneaked into the Ministry of Magic and were discovered were killed without exception. And they died in an unclear way. If he was caught by Scrimgeour and his identity as a Death Eater was exposed, then he would probably end up like other colleagues whose identities were exposed. Thinking of this, the expression on Michael's face suddenly became distorted, and his eyes looking at Scrimgeour were full of ferocity. Thunder explosion. Michael pulled out his wand at lightning speed and shouted in a low voice, trying to take the initiative. But Scrimgeour, who was already wary of Michael, how could he give the other party a chance to attack? Exclamation mark. Scrimgeour chanted the spell without hesitation, Expelliarmus. Red light burst out of the air and shot towards Michael, while Scrimgeour himself leaped to the side and dodged the orange light. The explosive curse flew past Scrimgeour and landed on the door frame behind him, causing a violent explosion. The door of the room and the wall on which the door was located were all blown down by the explosive curse, and everything that happened in the room also happened in front of Corrin and the staff of the Flu Network administration. On the other side, Michael quickly waved his wand and cast an armoring curse with great difficulty, which barely blocked Scrimgeour's disarming curse. Crucial. The smoke dissipated, and looking at the dozen or so Flu Network administration staff around him who were looking at him, Michael knew that he had been completely exposed. His expression became even more distorted, and he roared. The dark red beam of light burst out of the air like lightning, heading straight for Scrimgeour. Scrimgeour's face looked very ugly. After he rolled over in a panic to avoid Michael's attack, he quickly waved his wand and cast 5 silent stunning spells in succession. Scrimgeour was indeed the head of the Aura office. His magic skills were among the best among the Auras. Under Scrimgeour's continuous attacks, Michael was defeated step by step. He could only dodge again and again, while connecting with the armor spell to barely resist Scrimgeour's attacks. Michael knew that dodging blindly was not a solution. While approaching the direction of other employees, he raised his wand and cast powerful black magic to block Scrimgeour's attacks. Seeing Michael approaching other employees, Scrimgeour's face showed embarrassment. Michael was smart. His actions prevented Scrimger from using those powerful magics. After all, Scrimger had to consider his other colleagues. If he rashly used magic such as the explosive spell, then with the distance between Michael and other employees at this time, Scrimger could easily hurt others by mistake. But Michael didn't have such worries. After Scrimger's offensive weakened, he immediately became rampant. Thunder explosion. Flame blaze. Thunder explosion. Flame blaze. Michael's face was full of madness. He waved his wand vigorously and alternately cast 2 large-scale spells, the explosion spell and the fire spell. For a while, it was difficult for Scrimger, the head of the Aura office, to fight back. Fortunately, just when Scrimger felt embarrassed, Corrin took action. Expelliarmus. Fall to the ground. Break into pieces. Corrin waved his wand quickly. Although the spells he cast were some simple offensive spells with little power, the joint attack of the 2 elite auras still put Michael at a disadvantage again. However, looking at Scrimger and Corrin who were pressing forward and trying to capture him alive, Michael's face lost the tension. Armor to protect. Protect everyone. Stay safe. Michael released most of his remaining magic power at once and set up 3 defensive magics in front of him so that Scrimger and Cullen could not interrupt his actions temporarily. Then, Michael took out a small teacup from his pocket and Scrimger and Cullen could feel the weak magic fluctuations from the teacup. Oh no, the portkey. Seeing this, Scrimger and Cullen's faces changed and they thought to themselves that it was not good. It took them a week to find the murderer Michael Landry, and now the other party wanted to use the portkey to escape under their noses. How could they be willing to do this? Exclamation mark. Petrify all. Shatter to pieces. At this critical moment, 2 spells broke out from behind Michael, shattering the most vulnerable part of the defensive spells released by Michael, and went straight to Michael's back. Chapter 522, If public law is not enforced, lynching will inevitably prevail. Feeling the magical fluctuations coming from behind him, Michael was immediately shocked. In order to buy himself enough time to activate the portkey in his hand, the power of the 3 defensive spells Michael cast was concentrated in front of him, that is, to meet the attack of Scrimger and Corrin, and neglected the defense behind him. This made the power of the protective magic gathered behind him unable to resist even an elite aura level stun spell. Armor protect. In a hurry, Michael had to interrupt the action of activating the portkey in his hand and release an armor spell behind him. Unfortunately, the armor spell Michael released temporarily was obviously no match for the long prepared attack of the sneak attacker. The whole body binding spell exploded on the invisible shield, and while it was annihilated, it shattered Michael's armor spell. The crushing spell that followed was fiercely bombarded on Michael's back, blasting him forward and falling to the ground. His back was bloody under the effect of the crushing spell, and even the red heart could be seen. Old Barty? Thank you for your help. You really helped us a lot. Corrin, confiscate the key of that guy's door, control his injuries, don't let him die. Scrimger glanced at the person who attacked. He was a little surprised why Old Barty appeared in the Flu Network administration, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. After thanking Old Barty, he gave Corrin an order. However, before Corrin could make a move, Old Barty attacked again. Only after removing the disillusionment charm, Old Barty appeared in front of everyone with a blank expression. He had no intention of holding back, so he pointed his wand at Michael's head and shouted softly, "Split into pieces." As the blade of the slicing charm broke through the air, Michael's head exploded, leaving only the headless body and blood all over the ground. Seeing this scene, the surrounding Ministry of Magic staff all screamed and retreated, with horror in their eyes. Colin was also shocked by Barty's cruelty. He subconsciously took 2 steps back and looked at Barty in disbelief. Scrimger asked in shock and anger, "Barty, what are you doing? He has obviously lost the ability to resist. Why do you want to kill him?" As he said that, Scrimger subconsciously raised his wand and pointed it at Barty. Seeing this, Barty just smiled and waved his hand, signaling Scrimger to put down the wand. After Scrimger finally calmed down and put down the wand, Barty said lightly, "Pull Michael's sleeve open. I think you should be able to understand everything." Hearing Barty's words, Scrimger was stunned. He suppressed the doubts in his heart and pulled Michael's sleeve open as Barty said. Then, Scrimger, And the surrounding Ministry of Magic staff all exclaimed. Dark mark. Scrimger looked at the dark mark that appeared on Michael's arm in disbelief. Barty nodded and said with his hands spread out, yes, just as you think, Michael is a Death Eater, and he assassinated the unspeakable in the Department of Mysteries with the instruction of the unspeakable. Otherwise, why would he give up such a good job to assassinate the unspeakable who had no grudge against him? To put it another way, if he had not been instructed by the unspeakable, how could he have exposed his identity? Barty asked back. In fact, after following Scrimger to the Flu Network administration, the alchemical detector that Barty always carried in his pocket sounded an alarm to Barty, which was the reason why Barty could directly determine that the other party was a Death Eater. Scrimger stood up and said with a frown, even so, Michael should be tried by the laws of the Ministry of Magic and sent to Azkaban prison to spend the rest of his life according to the procedures. As one of the senior officials of the Ministry of Magic, I think you should understand this. Hearing this, old Barty smiled and waved the wand in his hand, casting a silent ear-blocking spell learned from Lin, so that only the two of them could hear their conversation. Scrimger, you should also know how corrupt the Ministry of Magic is under Fudge's leadership. It all started with Fudge, the Minister of Magic. Power is abused, rules are trampled on, and reputation has plummeted. How can you expect Michael to be tried fairly? Don't forget that he is still Fudge's party member. Do you think that when Fudge learns that you and I have arrested Michael, will he send him to Azkaban prison because of his identity as a Death Eater? Or will he suppress this matter because you and I are his political enemies, and for his own face, and confuse right and wrong, and refuse to admit that he is a Death Eater? Old Barty asked softly. Scrimger was silent. He had to admit that what old Barty said was indeed true, but as the head of the Aura office, he found it difficult to accept that old Barty had violated the laws of the Ministry of Magic and executed Michael. Scrimger gritted his teeth and said, but even so, as a Death Eater, Michael should only be punished by being sent to Azkaban prison for life imprisonment, not being executed. You know, old Barty, there is no such thing as a death penalty in the British wizarding world today. Hearing this, old Barty chuckled and said, shouldn't that be a matter of the Ministry of Magic's laws? Death Eaters commit heinous crimes, but their final destination is only Azkaban prison. How can this be fair to those wizards killed by the mysterious man in the Death Eaters? Scrimger's expression changed, and he accused, you are questioning the law, old Barty. Perhaps the laws of the Ministry of Magic are not as perfect as you and I think, but all you and I can do is to respect it. You and I are not children anymore. You should understand that rules with loopholes are much better than no rules at all. Hearing Scrimger's words, old Barty also put away his smile and his expression became serious. He just said softly, you are right, Scrimger, we are not children anymore. Well, you should also understand one thing, that is, if public law is not enforced, lynching will inevitably prevail. Even if Michael is imprisoned in Azkaban prison as you wish, if the mysterious man can break into the prison once, he can break it twice, 3 times or even more times. Instead of letting the tiger go back to the mountain, it is better to completely eliminate their threat. What do you think, Scrimger? Old Barty looked into Scrimger's eyes without avoiding, and he asked word by word. Chapter 523 I hope you are a smart person. Scrimger didn't know how to answer old Barty's question. As the head of the Aura office, he should clearly stand on the legal side and oppose old Barty's so-called death penalty, but his heart told him that old Barty might be right. If even the laws of the Ministry of Magic cannot guarantee fairness between wizards, then who would be willing to follow the laws of the Ministry of Magic? Exclamation mark. Scrimger still remembered a case in which he personally led a team to deal with a wizard using the unforgivable curse to kill someone. The cause of the case was a large-scale transaction of magic props between 2 wizards. The 2 wizards signed a magic contract for the transaction, but the magic contract was relatively simple and had not been encrypted and protected by other magic. This allowed one of the wizards to exploit the loophole and use the contract magic inherited from his family to secretly erase some of the conditions of the magic contract they signed and tamper with the content of the magic contract. This resulted in the magic contract becoming that the other party needed to pay the wizard hundreds of thousands of gold galleons, but the wizard did not need to give the other party anything. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that it was this wizard who had tampered with the contents of the magic contract and deliberately harmed the other party. However, under the modification of magic, even the Ministry of Magic could only determine that the magic contract was still valid, and the wizard who was harmed still had to pay hundreds of thousands of gold galleons, but would not get anything. After the wizard who was harmed refused to pay the gold galleons, the wizard who had tampered with the magic contract actually bit back and sent the other party to the Ministry of Magic for trial. Even if Scrimgeour and the judge at the time knew the truth of the matter, the magic contract was in front of everyone, and the Ministry of Magic could only determine that the wizard who was harmed was guilty according to the law, and sent him to Azkaban prison for 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not too much, but it is definitely not too little. Even those dark wizards who really committed crimes could not bear this kind of pain, let alone the wizards who were wronged and imprisoned in Azkaban prison! So, after the wizard who was trapped was released from prison, he immediately went to find the enemy who had tampered with the magic contract to trap him, and filed a lawsuit to cause him to be imprisoned in Azkaban. He used the most cruel means to torture the family of 4 of the wizard who tampered with the contract to death with the Cruciatus curse. This is also one of the most horrifying family annihilation cases in the British wizarding world in recent years. The Ministry of Magic did not disclose the details of the case to the public. The wizards in the British wizarding world only knew that a vicious black wizard used the Cruciatus curse to kill the whole family, but did not know the inside story. But Scrimgeour, who knew the inside story, knew in his heart that if there were no loopholes in the laws of the Ministry of Magic and the trial was not fair, how could the wizard who was trapped be wronged and imprisoned in Azkaban? If the wizard had not been wronged in this way, would he still have used cruel means to kill the other party's family of 4 as in the original trajectory? Perhaps the cause of all this was the greed of the wizard whose family was wiped out, but the Ministry of Magic also has an unshakable responsibility. You know, at the beginning of the trial, the wizard who was framed proposed to use truth serum on the wizard who tampered with the magic contract, so that he could tell the truth and clear his name. But the judge of the Ministry of Magic rejected the wizard's request on the grounds that the case did not meet the conditions for using truth serum. The Ministry of Magic has strict restrictions on the use of truth serum, but it is this so-called restriction that has ruined the lives of 5 wizards. Perhaps in the eyes of the Ministry of Magic, they have done their best. As the only government in the wizarding world, the Ministry of Magic must weigh the pros and cons. But for wizards, they will not think so much. They only know that if the Ministry of Magic cannot bring them fairness, then fairness will be obtained by themselves. If I were the Minister of Magic, the first thing I would do would be to abandon Azkaban prison, and the second thing would be to increase the death penalty. Old Barty looked at Scrimgeour and said slowly. As Barty Sr. finished speaking, he gently waved his wand, and with a pop sound, he apparated away from the Flu Network administration. Scrimgeour stared at the place where Barty Sr. stood before he left for a long time, then slowly moved his eyes away and instructed Colin beside him, "Take Michael's body away, and when you announce it to the public, say that Michael resisted arrest and attacked the auras and was accidentally hit in the head by the disarming curse during the aura self-defense counterattack and died." Hearing this, Colin was stunned and he hesitated, but Michael was obviously knocked down by Barty Sr.'s crushing curse, and then killed by the slicing curse. How could he be accidentally hit in the vitals during the aura's counterattack and die? Scrimgeour waved his hand, and he said impatiently, "Do as I say." Seeing that Scrimgeour had no intention of solving his doubts, Colin no longer hesitated. Completing the task assigned by his superior was the most important thing. He agreed and dragged Michael's headless body away. After Columbine dragged Michael's body away, and the staff of the Flu Network administration dispersed, Scrimgeour lowered his eyes slightly. "To be the Minister of Magic? Where does your confidence come from?" Scrimgeour said softly, his expression full of complexity. On the other side, Barty Sr. appeared in his office with a flash of white light. "Huh. I hope you are a smart man, Scrimgeour," Barty Sr. muttered to himself, his expression still complicated. In fact, Barty Sr. could have done it in secret as he did in the past, helping the auras to arrest Michael, and then find an opportunity to make Michael die accidentally after the trial of the Ministry of Magic. Instead of doing all this in front of Scrimgeour, the head of the Auror office, he almost personally handed his handle to the other party. Obviously, Barty Sr. did this on purpose, whether it was telling Scrimgeour his thoughts or inadvertently revealing his ambition for the position of Minister of Magic in his words. It was all done on purpose by Barty Sr. Barty could see that Scrimgeour was by no means a good-for-nothing like Fudge, but a truly capable Auror who could make the Ministry of Magic better with him in the future. Therefore, Barty hoped to win Scrimgeour's support in advance. He did not expect Scrimgeour to cheer for him. As long as their thoughts could reach a certain degree of unity, it would be enough to make Barty happy. Chapter 524. Burning too fast is not a good thing. If the Minister of Magic is the hand of the Ministry of Magic, then the Director of the Auror office is the knife in the hand of the Ministry of Magic. Only when the will of the hand and the knife are highly consistent, the hand can exert the full power of the knife and defeat the enemy. Barty Sr. did not intend to replace Scrimgeour, the director of the Auror office, after taking office as the Minister of Magic, so it was urgent to win Scrimgeour's support. As for whether Scrimgeour would not play by the rules and directly expose what he did, Barty Sr. was not worried. Not to mention that Scrimgeour was not such a person. Just because a large part of the Daily Prophet was controlled by him, he could be said to be resting easy in the field of public opinion. As long as he did not commit the great crime of killing innocent wizards with the unforgivable curse, it would not be enough to shake Barty Sr.'s popularity in the British wizarding world, which was reshaped by public opinion. You know, under the propaganda of the Daily Prophet, many people in the British wizarding world are shouting for Fudge to step down and elect Bartlett as Minister of Magic. With the Daily Prophet, to build momentum for Bartlett, the wizards in the British wizarding world have long forgotten the fact that he once had a son who was a Death Eater. Even if someone remembers this incident and brings it up, there will only be more people to retort him. Little Bartlett is dead. Bartlett can put his family aside for the sake of justice and resolutely draw a clear line with the Death Eaters. This is also commendable, isn't it? Regarding the change of public opinion, the most anxious person in the Ministry of Magic is naturally Fudge. He watched his political enemy reverse his image step by step, getting higher and higher, and he was so anxious that his mouth was full of bubbles. The only thing Fudge could use to attack Bartlett was the fact that Bartlett had a son who was a Death Eater, but as people became less and less concerned about this matter, Bartlett's rise seemed to become unstoppable. On the contrary, Fudge himself was completely thrown into the abyss after Barty mobilized the resources of the Daily Prophet to launch several counterattacks. Compared with Barty, Fudge had a lot more black material. The negative information about Fudge, provided to him by the Royal Family's intelligence network, was enough to make Fudge's reputation fall to the bottom. At the same time, in Hogwarts Castle, unlike the tense atmosphere of the Ministry of Magic, the atmosphere in Hogwarts Castle, which had just ended the Christmas holiday, was generally quite active. However, under Umbridge's high-pressure policy, this activity did not last too long. The situation in the Ministry of Magic was getting more and more out of control, which forced Fudge to pin his last hope on Umbridge. As long as Umbridge can disrupt Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, divert Dumbledore's attention, and delay the progress of his impeachment, then he still has a chance to turn defeat into victory and keep his position as Minister of Magic. Under the blows that followed one after another, Fudge was already insane. He was like an ostrich burying his head in the ground, ignoring the situation in the Ministry of Magic that was surrounded by enemies, ignoring the countless calls from the British magic community for him to step down, and ignoring the damage his stupid decision would bring to Hogwarts. He naively believed that, as long as he could delay the progress of the impeachment, he would have a chance to turn defeat into victory. But in fact, Fudge had already lost all his chances of winning. The reason why he could still stay in the position of Minister of Magic and not be driven out was only because someone needed him to sit there temporarily and attract hatred. He had already become a substitute that could be discarded at any time. Shortly after Michael's affair was exposed, old Barty once again made a fuss about this matter, and the news that Death Eaters appeared among Fudge's followers was also flying all over the British magic community. Even the young wizards in Hogwarts Castle had heard about this incident to some extent. They even asked their professors about it and learned a more comprehensive truth from them. In order to preserve Fudge's already pitiful reputation in Hogwarts Castle, Umbridge brought the Educational Decree number 26 to Hogwarts Castle without hesitation. Hogwarts Senior Inquisitor ordered teachers are hereby prohibited from providing students with any information that is not related to the subject they teach. The above regulations are in accordance with the Educational Decree number 26. Signature, Senior Inquisitor Dolores Jane Umbridge. In fact, this latest decree not only failed to prevent the spread of the news that Fudge's followers had become Death Eaters, but instead made some young wizards who were not interested in these things curiously learn about the incident from their companions. As Hermione said in the original book, if Umbridge could do one thing to absolutely ensure that everyone in the school would read this article, it would be to let Umbridge ban it. Although Fudge's reputation had long been stinking in the hearts of the little wizards in Hogwarts Castle before Michael's affair was exposed. But the Michael incident undoubtedly ignited the little wizards' dissatisfaction with Fudge and even Umbridge, who was still teaching in the castle. When they confided in their parents, they could not help but vent their dissatisfaction in the letter. This made the parents of the students who read the letter also feel dissatisfied and resisted. They demanded more strongly that Fudge step down and drive Umbridge, an outright politician, out of Hogwarts Castle. It can be said that, if someone told these parents that the pink toad who made trouble in Hogwarts Castle and even hurt students died in an accident on the territory of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, then the parents of the students would not worry about the safety of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, but would applaud. After all, with Umbridge's behavior, let alone a dark wizard sneaking into the castle to assassinate her, it would not be surprising, even if a senior wizard who was driven crazy turned against Cheyenne Gang and killed Umbridge with a spell. In the British wizarding world, parents of students are a relatively large group. Ignite their anger, which will undoubtedly make the flame burn more vigorously and spread to the entire British wizarding world at a faster speed. But it is not all good when the fire burns too fast. According to Lin and Irina's plan, they intend to deal with Umbridge, the pink toad who has lost its usefulness, at the end of the school year, and drive Fudge out of office and support old Barty as the new Minister of Magic. But this also means that before the end of the school year, they must keep Fudge in that damn position to attract hatred. Chapter 525, High Difficulty Mode and the Computing Power Support of the Alchemy Server. Under this premise, they have to ensure that the anger of the wizards is only focused on Fudge and his followers, rather than the Ministry of Magic itself. Fortunately, the speed of the fire is still under control. The wizards' doubts about the Ministry of Magic are only about Fudge, the incompetent Minister of Magic, Umbridge, the senior deputy minister of the Ministry of Magic who confuses right and wrong, and those good-for-nothing's followers, rather than the Ministry of Magic itself. Under the influence of Bartlett's diligent performance of his duties and his publicity in the Daily Prophet, the public's view of the Ministry of Magic has not been completely changed because of what Fudge and others have done, but they still have certain hopes. This means that the credibility of the Ministry of Magic has not been greatly affected for the time being, and Bartlett will be able to rectify the Ministry of Magic more quickly after he takes office in the future, without having to feel annoyed by a pile of messes. They can let Bartlett live in a house that has been turned upside down by the original owner, but they cannot let Bartlett live in a rough house. Compared with the purge of the Ministry of Magic and the replacement of most of the Ministry of Magic staff, rebuilding the authority of a Ministry of Magic that has lost its credibility is no different from building a new Ministry of Magic from scratch. After all, to build a Ministry of Magic, they can plagiarize the ideas and rules of the Muggles, but to build the credibility of the Ministry of Magic, it takes the efforts of generations of wise ministers of magic. In the following days, Lin and Irina began to arrange gatherings for the young wizards of the DAME again, and the frequency of the gatherings returned to once a week. A simplest fighting game, in addition to the movement keys, only needs the 3 keys of attack, block and dodge. Similarly, in the duel between wizards, there may be those dazzling spell duels. But as long as the above 3 types of magic are mastered, even a wizard who only masters 3 spells has the possibility of defeating a wizard who masters 300 spells. In the gathering before Christmas, Lin En had already taught these young wizards the Divine Sharpness spell, which ranked first in offensive ability. Irina taught these young wizards the most simple and practical defensive spell, the Iron Armor spell, in 2 gatherings. As for the life-saving disillusionment spell, Lin En taught them in the first gathering and used the illusion test to let them deepen their impression of the disillusionment spell. Therefore, before Christmas, they had already taught these young wizards all the spells that might be used in the war. From this gathering until the end of the school year, I will not teach you new magic. What you need to do in the next gathering is to hone yourself in the illusion test again and again and improve your duel level. In the room, where every request is answered, Lin En glanced at the young wizards who sat obediently on the ground in front of him and said in a deep voice, although the illusion test is fake after all, it is the best that Lin En can do. Otherwise, he can't really take these young wizards to attack the Death Eater's station, right? Exclamation mark. If there are only Death Eaters in the Death Eater's station, it's fine, but if Voldemort himself is refreshed in the Death Eater's station, then even Lin En can't guarantee the safety of these young wizards. He can't bet on the lives of these classmates and future comrades. After listening to Lin En's words, these young wizards still look normal. According to their previous experience, Lin En's illusion tests are mostly qualification tests. Although there is a certain degree of difficulty, it will not be too difficult for them. However, what Lin En said next made their faces change drastically. Lin En said grimly, in the next illusion test, I will create an illusion array of high difficulty mode. The illusion in the illusion array of high difficulty mode will be more real, and the difficulty of passing the level will increase exponentially. In the illusion test of high difficulty mode, the only way to fail besides passing the level is death. In other words, if you can't pass the level in a very small number of times, then you will taste the taste of death repeatedly. I think that shouldn't be a pleasure. The unlucky guy who was lucky enough to be hit by the Avada Kedavra curse in the illusion test may be able to give you a clear answer. Lin En said so, and his words made many young wizards turn pale. When Lin En waved the magic wand in his hand, 5 illusion arrays were quickly formed in just 1 minute. Among them, 4 illusion arrays were in a dormant state, and the remaining illusion array was in an operating state. After refining these 5 illusion arrays, Lin En did not stop his work. Lin En took out a silver cube from his pocket. It was the old chemical detector that Nicholas Flamel gave him as a Christmas gift. After Lin En's attempts over the past few days, Lin En discovered that in addition to its detection and analysis capabilities, this old chemical detector also had powerful data processing capabilities and could be called a supercomputer in the magic world. As a product of alchemy, the old chemical detector can connect to most of the old chemical arrays in the world and work together with them, which gave Lin En the idea of adding it to the illusion array. Under Lin En's improvement, this old chemical detector can drive 10 illusion arrays at the same time and act as a server. Yes, if the illusion test compiled by the illusion array is a completely simulated game, then this old chemical detector is the server of this game, which can provide computing power support for all the little wizards in it. That is, players. I win. You will take the lead in this high difficulty mode of illusion test. Lin En smiled and looked at Iwin and ordered. With the computing power of the alchemy detector, the illusion test will tailor a difficulty that reaches Irving's limit, but is not completely impossible for Irving to achieve, based on Irving's attribute panel given by the alchemy detector. Irving nodded, holding his wand tightly, and walked into the illusion array. With the appearance and disappearance of the white mist, Irving found himself in Nocturne Alley, and he was wearing Aura's clothes. Just as Irving was about to take action, a blue screen suddenly appeared in front of him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.